Absolute geezers, welcome. It's that time of the week. It's not 9 o'clock, it's 7:30. Hope you're all feeling fantastic. And before I go to my co-hosts, it's that time. Extended intro that was, lads. That was an extended one. How are we all doing?
All right, Dan. How are you, matey? With your extended intro.
Do my best. I do my best. Ladies and gents, if you're joining and you're new to the show, first and foremost, please hit the subscribe button below and make sure you're sharing it with your friends. We're trying to get out there to as many people as we can, and we have got a fantastic show for you tonight. Vorney, Coyney, how you both been this week, guys?
Same as always, mate. Same as we say every single week. Just looking forward until we can actually do things again. And it's a week closer, isn't it? So we're 2 weeks away from, in fact, 2 weeks today, Sunday League football starts again. And then it's all going to snowball from there, isn't it? So, yeah, getting closer, mate. Getting closer.
Spot on. We've got Dan says, evening, fellas. Thanks for coming on, Dan. You're in fact, I'm not going to spoil it too much, but your podcast is coming out this week. We've got the Dugout who's coming on soon, says so many memes. I'll get to you in a minute, Douglas. We've got Russell Cox saying, just made it in time. Yes, you did. Glad to have you aboard. And I've also got a bit of banter about I'm not even gonna dignify that with an answer. And also we've got Craig Young. Scott is a great guy, very highly regarded up here in Scotland. Thanks for coming along, Craig. Funny, interesting story about how I met Craig. I met him in a bar in Mallorca many years ago, very drunk on karaoke. But I digress. Before we start, guys, as always, I've got to show a bit of love to Kaito Apparel. They are sponsoring us tonight. Kaito Apparel offers a print-on-demand service for all of your work and wear needs. From T-shirts and hoodies to polos and jumpers, they have it all. Kaito also offer a range of fun and friendly T-shirts designs which perfectly evoke nostalgia. No minimum orders necessary, available now. So visit www.kaitoapparel.com or email info@kaitoapparel.com for a no obligation quote today. I need a bloody sip of a beer after that.
Is that where I start to model the T-shirt?
This is the model. Yeah? This is what we do, modelling away. Look at that. So, lads, tonight we have got a show for everybody who is tuning in. And again, if you're new, make sure you hit the subscribe button there. Before we start, we do just want to say a massive condolences go to Steve Jagielka's family this week. Absolutely stunned to hear the news. What a player, especially Vorney and Coyney will echo that. It's a player that you both have watched for a very long time for Town when he played in his earlier years. Absolutely stunned to see the news.
Just incredible, wasn't it? Just incredible. I heard a rumour, I think, Tuesday, and I think Coyney might have heard something as well. And then obviously the news broke on Wednesday, and it's just totally shocking, isn't it? It's certainly at the age of 43 as well. Both of us, Coyney, we'd have seen most of his games for Shrewsbury in that 6 year period, wouldn't we? And obviously he went on to play for AFC Telford, Ellesmere, and Market Drayton as well. So it wasn't just Shrewsbury. He's putting a lot back into the local Shropshire football scene as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, quite right. Quite rightly so.
And that was one of the shirts he'd have worn as well at the back there. So yeah, that's the kit that he'd been wearing when he set up one of the goals at the Great Escape in Exeter in 2000, wasn't it? And I think he was not only a player who was well known locally in Shropshire, but a guy who was really well known, really well liked as well. And it was just when you heard the news on. I think it was Wednesday. It eventually broke publicly. I think everyone was just absolutely stunned. Really, really, really sad news. And a player who a lot of Shrewsbury Town fans have got really, really good memories of in those 6 years. I mean, you mentioned Exeter. But you can also mention Everton as well. I mean, he actually won the free kick that Ian Wone delivered to Nigel Jemson, and Nigel Jemson's header obviously won the game in the last minute against Everton in 2003. So some really big moments for our club. And just to echo what you both have said, condolences go out to his family and his friends, and our thoughts are with them.
Yeah, quite rightly said.
I think he got the assist for the second goal at Exeter as well, didn't he? So I mean, that was probably my favourite game of watching Jags play. I think was that game. Somebody asked me the other day, what was your favourite Jagielka moment, and that would be it by an absolute country mile. That day was just a fantastic day, wasn't it? So
may you rest in peace. May you rest in peace.
Absolutely, can only echo that.
So this week we've got. I'm really excited for this show, and big thanks to Vorney for hooking us up with this gentleman. Mr. Scott Struthers is coming on, a UEFA delegate match stadium inspector. Coyney's got a story to tell you as well about Aberystwyth. But before we bring him on. Look at that picture. Look at that picture. A thing of beauty. Welcome, Scott. How you doing, my friend?
I'm surprised some of those went black and white. I'm very well. Thank you very much for having me too.
No, fantastic. A lot of love for you tonight, Scott. Actually, as I said, Craig Young. Scott is a great guy, very highly regarded up here in Scotland. We've also got Dan here who says, looking forward to hearing from Scott. I met him at Preston North End under-18s versus Blackpool 18s last January. Honestly, we'll get into it more in a minute, but is there anywhere you don't go?
Not really, no. Football is a great passion for everybody, and so is travelling. And football can combine both naturally. Whether it's within Scotland, and games down to England, further afield within the UK and Europe. It's fantastic, and it gives you experience, entertainment, different cultures, different beers, different food. And I know Lee goes to lots of England away games. I've been over 100 Scotland away games, and we would frequently say, the football ruins a good trip. Because you go there, you meet up with your mates, your friends, people you only see maybe 5-6 times a season. You might only see some people. I mean, there's some people I've only ever met abroad, for example. Never actually met them at Hampden or anything else. And it's things like that add to the entertainment value and the feeling and the passion that a lot of us have for football.
No, completely agree. And actually, Scott, I'm glad to have you on, because we've actually got someone on the show who's been to more games than bloody Vorney has, which is brilliant.
He's 10 years older as well.
As I said, guys, if you're tuning in and you've got questions for Scott, we will definitely get through them. I can see one's popped up by Craig, which we will definitely speak to Scott about shortly. From myself, Scott, I've got to ask you, working with UEFA like you do, how have you found COVID as a UEFA delegate? Has it changed so much for you in your role?
It's changed everything. A lot of the role is still the same. The role of a UEFA delegate, you're overall responsible for making sure that the match is properly organised by the two teams of the two countries. The competition regulations are met, the kit regulations, safety and security, the proper organisation of the game, all the things that surround the game of football. And if you're talking about, say, a Champions League match, as much as you love to be in a stadium, at the same time, too, everybody loves to watch it on TV, Tuesday, Wednesday nights throughout the autumn or the knockout stage that's on just now. And it's the amount of preparation and attention to detail that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that those in the stadium and the armchair fans, the millions around Europe and the world, are watching a spectacle. And everybody tunes in, from the music, the hairs in your neck, all the rest of it. Everybody loves to watch a Champions League game in telly, no matter who the two competing teams are. And there's a hell of a lot of work goes in behind it. But you've mentioned COVID. COVID's changed everything. The first thing, obviously, clearly is travel, restrictions, face masks, get a COVID test before the game. The protocols, the teams have to come in chartered jets now. They can't just jump on EasyJet or anything else to get to a game. We're not just talking about Champions League 2. You get all the way down. You've got Women's Champions League. You've got the World Cup Qualifiers this week. Unfortunately, a lot of the youth tournaments have been cancelled this season. The UEFA Youth League, the women's and men's 19s and 17s, these competitions simply would have been an additional challenge too far, an additional risk too far, perhaps. So it's hugely changed, and a lot of the things that I'm doing at a game now, carry out like a monitoring role also at the team hotels, making sure that the restaurant is big enough, that they've been properly served in the restaurant, they're spaced out, there's only 2 or 3 at a table, maybe only one staff member with a serving spoon rather than lots of folk with different spoons. It's the small things like that to try and make sure that the teams are adhering to the protocols, off the park, as well as making sure they do on it. And then, of course, as we've all seen from watching games on TV this season, almost the whole main stand suddenly becomes a technical bench. You've got substitutes sitting all over the place and spaced out and all the rest of it. And that's going to be a real challenge when fans do return, even in small numbers. I know they're talking about maybe 10,000 at Wembley for the Euros, for example, and it's still an if at the moment. But, I mean, you'd still lose a lot of the main stand at Wembley because you're going to have, with international games taking place in the Euros, you don't just have, say, 7 or 8 subs that you have domestically in the league. You've got 11, 12 subs for international matches, maybe 12 kitmen, masseurs, goalie coaches, analysts, all the paraphernalia that surrounds games nowadays. So you can have maybe 25 people from each team on the bench, so to speak. And given that they're all spaced out 2 metres, I mean, 2 metres is actually 4 empty seats between each people and 2 empty rows front and back. That's a hell of a lot of space just to get 25 people in. You're talking perhaps maybe 600-700 seats for those 25 people.
That's incredible. You don't actually think about that. Like when we watch, I watched that bloody shite show that was United just now against Leicester, and you don't actually realise until you hear someone say that. Yeah, they are. They're spaced out seats away from each other, and what goes into putting that game on is incredible work-wise. It's not just meeting up on a Saturday afternoon and saying, right, let's just crack on with it. There are so much rules and regulations that are needed to be followed, aren't there, with regards to the games. Now, with regards to your other role with stadium inspections, what preparation goes into that?
You want to Google, first of all, you want to find out why the stadium is being inspected. What kind of games or what level of games is it foreseen to hold? Is it hosting Champions League, international games? Is it hosting maybe qualification round games in July, August, for example? Is it under 21s? Is it foreseen for a youth league match? Is it foreseen for a group stage game in the Europa? So you want to find out what it's going to be hosting first of all. Different competitions, of course, require different categories of stadiums. You're not going to play England v San Marino next week at, with all due respect, Burton Albion. Just to pick a name, for example, it's got to have a certain number of seats, certain size of dressing rooms, certain lux value for the floodlights, a certain size of TV compound, number of toilets, ratio of toilets for male and female spectators in relation to the size of the crowd, all the rest of it. So there's a whole host of things. So I want to know what the stadium's hosting first of all, what the stadium facility has already got. Has it been recently refurbished? Is it a brand new stadium? Is it still being partially built? I mean, I did the one in Haifa in Israel that's hosted a lot of international games in the last few seasons. I did it when it was still 6 months from completion. The new one in Albania that opened up just about November 19, in fact. I did it in the 3 weeks prior to opening because there were a really tight schedule for the opening game against France, which I think was in the Nations League. It was a really tight schedule. There was literally still spannering and chiseling and all sorts of things up till the day before the game, but the game took place. The important thing is always to make sure that the game takes place, but it's got to take place safely, securely, service, all the things that go into a game of football to make sure that the stadium is fit to take spectators, because the last thing UEFA or any competition organiser wants is something going wrong, God forbid a disaster of any sort or an incident of any sort, happening on their watch. It doesn't matter whether it's the English Premier League or CONCACAF or whatever country it is. The competition organisers and the stadium owners, the operatives, they're the ones that ultimately bear the responsibility to ensure that the venue chosen is perfectly safe, suitable for the category of game that it's going to be hosting.
You talk about stadiums that you've been to. A couple I want to get on. First and foremost, it's you actually did the inspection for Aberystwyth Town, didn't you, a few years ago?
I did, yeah. I know one of your chaps there is an Aberystwyth fan. It was roughly about 7 years ago now, spring 2014. I did
2014 against Derry City.
Yeah, well, I'll come on to that in a wee minute. But Aberystwyth, of course, we're really looking at, for Europa League qualification rounds, you can't have standing spectators, so it's seats only, and you need a Category 2 stadium for the qualifiers in July, August, and that's a minimum 1,500 covered seats. Now, Aberystwyth fell short of that. The number of covered seats around the ground at that time was just a fraction over 1,005 seats they had, which included 350, I think, behind a goal in a covered area, which was for the away spectators. Now, while the ground fell short of Category 2 standards in terms of the number of seated seats it had available, in some cases of hardship or other reasons, you can apply for an exemption. So the Welsh FA, I believe, had sought an exemption for Aberystwyth because they were facing 2.5 hours travel to Wrexham or 2.5 hours travel to Swansea, Cardiff. So they put in an exemption that it would have been, hardship or inconvenience for the supporters to take the Aberystwyth match, north or south. So they got special permission for it to take place in Aberystwyth, albeit with a capacity lower than would be normal for the competition. Now, there was lots of other things we had to deal with, everything from the doping control room to dressing room sizes, everything else. There were lots of things that we could do or make adjustments to or suggest improvements and shortcomings to the club to get it to take place. But ultimately, of course, they wanted the stadium to take place, or the game to take place with as many Aberystwyth fans as they could. So that really they were hoping at the time for a draw against an East European team, perhaps who would not bring any or many visiting supporters, so they could get all 1,005 seats filled with Aberystwyth fans. And of course, in many ways, they get the draw from hell by drawing Derry City, because we all know, the Scots, the English, the Irish, the Welsh, the UK countries love a European away day, love an international away day. We all love to travel, as we spoke about earlier. And of course, the Derry City, the Irish fans would travel in very, very large numbers. And of course, it was a lot. Okay, Aberystwyth still got a full house, but of course, it was 350 less Aberystwyth fans at the game. And on Derry too, Derry also played in Scotland. In 2008, they played Gretna. 2006, in fact, they played Gretna. Gretna had only came in, flitted in and flitted out, as you know, between 2002 2008, but managed to go through all 4 leagues and get the Scottish Cup final and play in the UEFA Cup all in that 6-year period. But Gretna got drawn against Derry, and the game was switched to Motherwell's Fir Park. I think Derry brought about 2,000 fans to Motherwell, for that game as well. So it was really unfortunate for Aberystwyth. But I mean, and also they were heavily beaten too, if I remember. But it meant, of course, that they couldn't get all the Aberystwyth fans in.
What was the score, Coyney? What was the score?
One of the games I think was 5 or 6, and I can't remember about the other, to be honest.
Was it like watching your lot against Instones?
Which time?
Fair point.
It was the time you played centre half, mate. It wasn't that bad.
I'm a marauding centre back. I could have done better for United today, I think. But with regard, I've got a couple of questions for you, Scott, from the boys in the comments. We've got Dave Roberts has said, and Dave will be on shortly. Actually, Dave, you could have waited and asked him yourself, mate. How did you get the post with UEFA and with obviously the stadium inspections there?
I'd been involved in Scottish football for a long time. I first got involved at Hamilton Accies back in 1983 as assistant secretary and then club secretary. And I was full-time up until 2014. And I went part-time, flexi time then to do a lot more for UEFA. But simply it was years and years of experience match organising within Scotland. It was also acting as head of delegation and team administrator on maybe over 40 occasions for the Scotland youth teams or women's teams when they were playing abroad. Because obviously the SFA, like the English FA, they've got presidents, vice presidents, but they can't be everywhere. So as we all know, the international weeks in September, October, November, you might find, that the A squad are playing, the 21 squad are playing, the women are playing, the 17s and 19s, and people can't be everywhere. So the SFA, like many others, would borrow people from some of the clubs to represent them, abroad, to represent the SFA abroad, either doing a team administrator role or, the overall head of delegation to represent the SFA in, whatever country you happen to be for an under-17 tournament, for example. So I've done that, many times over the years as well. And it was about 2011 the chance came. It was one of the then vice presidents of the SFA suggested to me, here's something that's right up your street. Football games, travelling abroad, match organisation, all the things that that you're passionate about. And he said to apply for it. So I hummed and hawed, and I think the day before the application, I hadn't yet put my application in, and someone from the SFA phoned to say, we haven't yet received it. I thought, all right, okay, that was a bit of a nudge. So I put my application forward, and that led to going to a training course at Neon, UEFA's headquarters, a couple of months later for a 3-day training course. And from that, you then do an observation mission in your own country, where you attend a UEFA game in your own country to observe the delegate, see how it's all done behind the scenes. Then you're appointed to a match yourself, a low-key game yourself as a delegate with a mentor beside you. So the first match I got at my own was Liechtenstein v Turkey under-21s. And again, a place that you'd very rarely get the chance to go and visit. And the chap mentoring me was a great guy, Dana Jost from Slovenia, who at that time been a UEFA delegate for 10 years. He was also a stadium inspector, and I still speak to him and whatnot now. We actually had a Zoom meeting of all the UEFA stadium inspectors just on Thursday there, and Dana was on that too. So really just simply years and years of experience behind the scenes that led me to the SFA putting me forward to be a match delegate. And then from that, within about 18 months, UEFA had then further taken me on and put me into the role also of a UEFA stadium inspector. Simply just through watching football, being passionate about football, knowing stadiums, all the ins and outs. And of course, the trained eye, as many of the people on here are and listening are, we will see things in a football ground that fans use. That it's experience, it's a service part. It's not just safety and security football; it's a service part as well. That's absolutely vital, and you've got to take account of as well. And so our eyes might pick up things, even say the local match commander, even the stadium manager, might not see. For example, I mean the tea mug that I've got here. Actually, we mentioned earlier on Śląsk Wrocław from Poland. I was delegate at one of their games against Chelsea in the Uefa qualifiers about 6 years ago. And on the day of the game, I was doing my checks outside the stadium, checking the turnstiles, checking the ultras end, as you do, of course, make sure everything's well behaved. And then I want to go and check the facilities. Are the kiosks and the toilets and the sanitary facilities, are they the same in the ultras end as they are, for example, in the family section or the VIP section? So I went to go through the turnstiles with the Śląsk ultras in Poland. And of course, accompanying me was my liaison officer. That was fine. But the chief of police and stadium manager were also accompanying me, and they were sort of more worried about having to go into the ultras end and things like that. I said, well, I'm walking in with a UEFA blazer on. It's no skin off my nose. I'm doing my job. I want to make sure that everything's fine for the fans at the game. So it's things like that. I did an inspection too in Dinamo Zagreb. And of course, went to the Bad Blue Boys, their ultras section. Of course, there was nobody there, an empty stadium, and doing an inspection. And one of the policemen commented he'd never actually been in, the home end of the ground in all these years of policing at the stadium and everything else. So I think a lot of people, when you have a stadium inspection, actually appreciate it. Whether it's the police, the chief of police, the match commander, even the stadium managers, they see parts of the stadium that they wouldn't normally see, because I'm covering the whole thing with a fine tooth comb. Everything from TV gantries to where the TV lorries park outside, to the Dopa control room, to the ladies' toilets, to everything. There was one stadium I was doing, I won't say which country it was, but I asked to see, I was in the main stand, I asked to see the ladies' toilets, and the chap just shook his head. And we were deep in Eastern Europe. I said, ladies' toilets are mostly, sit down ladies, skirts, they have to go to the toilet somewhere. And the chap shook his head again. I said, no, this is an international stadium. There's European games here. You must have ladies' toilets. So eventually the penny dropped, and he up some nooks and crannies and stairs and round corridors and dusted down cobwebs off some door. And it creaked open to reveal toilets that hadn't been used in maybe 10 years. And that was a ladies' toilet. I said, well, something not good enough, not acceptable in 21st century.
I've before just got to say, Scott, when you were saying that, Dan has put Ghost, poor Coyney's t-shirt. I think it was one of his pictures dropped off the wall behind him. I thought, what the bloody hell was that? Craig Young says you need to ask him about his record amount of games he attended in one season. Incredible.
2 seasons ago, it was 330 games in the one season, 2018-19, which also was the last full season that any of us had. And to be fair, I went for it. Up till, I would say in the 1980s, I was doing between 50 and 100 games a season. And then in the 90s and early 2000s, it was always roughly 200 games a season. And then I think for 7 successive seasons, I finished them between 195 and 199 each season. And I thought, to hell with this. I wanted to go for it. Then I just went for it, began doing then. It was 240, 280. And I've been around 280 to 300 for about 10 years. And then the last couple of seasons, I was 320 and then 330. And had last season not finished when it did. I was in 247 when it finished this time last year. I'd probably have been 340 to 350.
Christ almighty. I'm not no excuse. I get like 10 I get 10 a season if I'm bloody lucky.
That's definitely not good enough.
I tell you what, Vaughan, he's pissed all over your chips.
Well, just a bit. Hey, you can't say that. It's before 9 o'clock.
It is before 9. Yes. Sorry to the children out there.
Yeah. In all fairness, yeah, Scott is doing larger numbers than I am. I've got to be honest. I don't keep records really like that, but I'm guessing a season. Yeah, I'm 120, 130, 140, something like that I would have thought. But yeah,
amateur.
Yeah, a mere amateur.
I'm young, 3 and single. That's the difference. So,
very horny.
Yeah, so I'm still not on your numbers.
No. Big shout out to Gareth Thomas. He's sending his wavy emojis there. Gareth's a great guy. Got a lot of time for Gareth. Involved in a club which actually I'll have to get him on soon and talk about it. Uprising FC. In fact, I'm not going to say too much. I'll get him on the show about that because it's absolutely brilliant the work he does there. Dan says, if there's a Scottish ground you could visit which you haven't been to, what would it be? Mine's the old Tinto Park, Benburb. Christ almighty.
I've been at Old Benburb's ground many times. It's 15-20 minutes from where I stay. The new one is actually adjacent to where the old ground was.
I saw you there, Scott.
Discussion about this on one of the ground hop WhatsApp groups actually during the week. If there was a ground in Scotland that you'd love to have visited, and most people went for Cathkin Park, the old home of Third Lanark. I've been there in recent years for amateur games, but I mean, if you'd been there, in the 50s or 60s, with a full house, for a league match or a cup tie, for example, I think that's the one ground that still exists. The ground is still there. The terracing's still there, the concrete, the crush barriers. It's overgrown and trees planted in places, but they have kept completely clear sections that are still there. And the ground's very easily and very readily visitable in Glasgow this day. So it's certainly a ground in Scotland that that I'd love to have been at, full. But other than that, there's not a lot in Scotland I've not done, apart from some of the North Region junior grounds. But I mean, there's another chap, Lee Vaughan will also know, Dave Woodings. Dave Woodings does, leagues in Scotland I haven't even heard of.
He does, that's right.
There's leagues in Skye and Uist and Murray Welfare, summer leagues, all sorts of things. Wonderful football, a great level of literally amateur football. Guys just turning up, playing a game of football, and then going away for a pint with their mates.
Sounds like heaven to me, that does.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic, and it's in very scenic parts of the country as well. But I mean, Dave has actually done more grounds in Scotland than I have. I've only heard of half the ones that he's been to. I
think Craig Young, who actually commented before, I think I don't know if he's still there. He was co-coach of Rob Roy, is it? Is there a club called Rob Roy?
Yeah, Rob Roy, yeah.
He was involved heavily. And I don't know if you're still watching, Craig. If you are, mate, let me know if you're still part of that. It's a club. They're quite far up, aren't they?
They're one of the top teams in the what we used to call the juniors, but obviously now moving into a pyramid non-league level. But Rob Roy now, in fact, played in the very first junior game that I saw, and it was the 1982 Junior Cup semi-final. Rob Roy against Blantyre played at Hamilton's old ground, Old Douglas Park, and there was 10,000 for a 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday afternoon, which was huge. And when Junior Cup semis, the finals got very big crowds back in the day. Nowadays, Rob Roy v Blantyre in a league game would attract maybe 250 to 300 at the most. In a Junior Cup tie, a couple of thousand at the most. I mean, 10,000 crowds like that you can only dream of now.
Such a shame, that is. Such a shame.
Yeah. I actually went up to Kirkham to look at Rob Roy, actually, just before they moved, Scott.
Yeah.
Which was probably 5 or 6 years ago now from their old ground. Actually, you said about New Tinto Park there. Me and Vinny met you there, didn't we, before the Scotland-England game? Yeah.
Scotland-England game, that's right, yeah.
And we you'll like this, Dan and Coyney. Yeah, Scott offered me and Vinny a lift down to Hampden Park for the England game afterwards. And we got near Hampden Park, and I think you stopped a little way from Hampden Park, Scott, because you didn't want to see 2 English blokes climb out the back of your car, I don't think, did you?
No, I think the pub you wanted to go to was en route.
He said, lads, you're going to have to get out here because I can't go down to Hampden Park with you 2 in the back of my car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, do you know what? Actually, it's funny you should say that because a lot of people, it's bizarre, Scott. When I spoke to a guy at work who's a massive Ayr United fan, and I said, I've got a Uefa delegate from Scotland coming on the show this week. And he went, all right. I said, you involved in Hamilton? He went, Scott Struthers. And I went, How the bloody hell do you know that? How the bloody you're very well known, mate, across the game.
I've just been around a while. That's nothing more, nothing less. I just go in and do my bit and help out, and I try and promote games. I mean, I love going to amateur games. I mean, I mentioned earlier on about watching Champions League games on TV. Everyone loves to do that. But if there's an amateur game on 5 minutes away at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night, I'll be there watching it. Because I can watch the news, the TV, the Twitter feeds, later on. I'm not going to miss anything from a Champions League game, for example. But I'd rather be standing, jeans and t-shirt, hands in pockets, watching a game of football, regardless of male or female, 17s or World Cup tie. I'd rather be at a game than watch a game on TV. As much as we want to see people, the sponsors, the advertisers, and watch the Champions League and telly as well.
Here. There's also I've got to mention, I've got to show some love for Matt Harrison, part of the Geary cast in Malaga. Absolutely brilliant bloke, really, really nice lad. I got a lot of time for him. Had him on my podcast recently. And,
I listened to that earlier on the week. Actually, it was excellent.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank
you.
The
Lost Boyos, wasn't it?
That's it. The Lost Boyos. Brilliant bloke. Honestly, hate him because at the moment he's in Spain and he can stay in the pub till bloody 11 o'clock at night. But I'm not even going to give him the time of day for that. But what we did say off air was you actually used Matt for one of your stadium inspections for your Uefa. Tell us the story. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier on, Spain having to play the Faroes in Marbella, and obviously in preparing for a stadium inspection, just now a lot of them are done by Zoom. And it's just to reduce the travel and risks and mitigations, understandable in the circumstances. But I was inspecting Marbella's ground back in September, October, ahead of Spain playing a 21s international there. So obviously I supply the Spanish FA and the local club Marbella with what I want to see in advance of the actual day we do the inspection by Zoom. And also I want to see pictures. So all they give me is pictures, videos, walk-rounds, whatever it happens to be. And I want to see the usual things: home and away dressing rooms, referees' room, doping control, toilets, pitch, dugouts, all the areas that are going to be used for a game of football. Where's the team bus drop off? Where's the doping control waiting room? What's the access route for the referees? How many showers has the referee got? So all these things. So I've submitted a list of photographs and pictures and videos that I'd like to see from the Spanish authorities. But I mean, at the same time too, I know there'll be wee things here and there that they'll miss out on, specific things that I want to ask, that I want to see, that may get lost in the translation, so to speak. So I knew that Matt lived in Marbella, teaching English in Spain just now. So I dropped Matt a quick message on WhatsApp or Twitter and said, can you up there and take some pictures for me? I want to know where the team, but just some of the roads. For example, is the ground well signposted? Are there signs of Marbella saying, Estadio, this direction, whatever it happens to be? Just things that we mentioned again, service. So fans know where they're going to the game, for example. So I wanted pictures of any signage in Marbella pointing to the stadium. Was there any, the access, where would the team bus stop off at the car park? What street parking was there? Just things that I thought that I might not get in the overall picture that they would supply me. I wanted just some additional pictures, so I gave Matt various instructions, set him off there with his iPhone and his camera and his baseball cap on back to front as he does, and had him walk around Marbella's ground for me 2 or 3 times, and he was superb. Gave me a good 15 pictures, which to be fair did greatly add to the inspection and the overall profile and report that I could end up doing for UEFA. So I sent him a UEFA baseball cap and a pen and a key ring as a wee thank you, which he now likes and enjoys.
That's good.
What a story. As I say, I know, obviously talking to him myself, he'd have jumped at the chance to do that. He's very helpful with that sort of stuff. But it's just, I love the story, and I can just picture the chap saying to you, bloody hell, Scott, you got some great pictures here. Where did you from? Where did you get them?
The thing was, when UEFA said to me, can you go and inspect Marbella? And of course, this is back in the autumn when the travel restrictions were allowable, and which is great, Marbella in November would be fantastic sort of thing, and then he goes by Zoom. I thought, bugger,
I did ask, I prepped you about this off air, so I'm not attacking you with this one, and you already told me off a little bit, but I will ask again because you didn't tell me to bugger off. As we've alluded to, you've been involved in the highest level in Scotland for many years. The question I'd like to ask is: are there any changes that you'd like to see made in the Scottish game?
It's the same reaction I gave you before we came on. It's a huge question. You don't want to rip up reinvent the wheel, so to speak. It's difficult right now with no fans and empty grounds and all sorts of things. You've got to make it more. Entertainment is ultimately what it's all about, but it's how you make that experience better. You know, I think what Great Britain as a whole lacks is the continental cafe culture, bar culture, fan zone type culture, which is very common in many European cities. You know, whether it's Norway or Spain, North to South Europe, whether it's top divisions or even level 4s. There's loads of wee cafe bars that surround many foreign, and you can just sit there and chew the cud and watch the world go by and then toddle along at 5-3 for the game of football. We don't have that in the UK for a whole variety of societal reasons and all sorts of things. But if we were to have that sort of continental, the nearest we've got to is the people selling scarves and banners and pin badges outside grounds. That's the nearest we've got to it.
Oh, the bloody half and half scarves. Oh,
yeah, but that's nowhere near the same thing. We don't have a cafe. We do have a drinking culture in the UK, of course we do. We do like a pint before a game or a pint with mates after a game. Let's go and discuss it all over again. Was it a penalty? All the things that we have us discussing and have us passionate about football. And of course, it's that makes football the great game that it is. It's a game of opinions. There's 4 of us sitting here. We can watch a penalty in a game this afternoon and we can have 4 different views on that penalty. But that's what's brilliant about the whole thing.
Yeah.
So if anything, it's the service part of football that I'd like to see changed in the UK to make it a better experience, because grounds have changed beyond recognition over the last 30, 40 years. I mean, we mentioned Cathkin Park earlier on. Craven Cottage, I know has been mentioned in your podcast before, which has been rebuilt just now. These wonderful, old, full of character football grounds are slowly being usurped by the new modern concrete bowls. But the modern concrete bowls are for service. You can't just, we mentioned the stadium, they are not having any female toilets. Now you go in and there's baby changing rooms in some stadiums and all sorts of things. And you need to have that nowadays in any modern venue. You've got to cater for everybody and equality and all these things. It's absolutely essential. So I think it's the service part of the UK needs brought up in, not everywhere, but it's in certain areas.
Do you know what? It's funny you should say that. And do you know what? I'll come to you, Coyney, about that with regards to the grounds you go to in Wales. But before I do, the service part of it, I speak to a lot of people who go to Germany to watch games. They absolutely love going to Germany. And something that they tell me that you can do with a ticket you buy in Germany is you can go on travel. You can travel anywhere.
Yeah, you can.
You can travel with that ticket. Now, Coyney, can you imagine trying to get the number 14 from Sunderland to Town Centre with a Shrewsbury Town ticket? They'd tell you to get off and bugger off, wouldn't they? It's so you talk about that service side of it, Scott. I completely agree. There's that bringing that whole, it's a day out, it's a day of entertainment to the table. Now, Coyney, you and you, of course, Coyney, but with regards to the town, in fact, I'll keep it with you as well, Coyney. They've started trying to do a fan zone now, haven't they? When Shrewsbury Town play, I mean, obviously, it's not been able to do it recently with what's happened with COVID, but they really tried to give that a good go. For you lads, do you think it's worked?
I do. I don't know, Coyney, if you'd agree with me, but from attending the Supporters Parliament meetings over the last 2 or 3 years, I think the uptake in the fan zone has been very good. The people who use the fan zone seem to enjoy it and seem to keep going back. And I think the proof is the fact that it's still there and it's still going after, I think now 3 years, maybe 4 seasons of doing it. So if it wasn't working and it wasn't being used, they'd have canned it after the first few months. I don't use it myself on a regular basis for a variety of reasons. To be honest, I play for the away supporters team on Saturday, so usually it's a bit of a rush to actually get in the ground for quarter to 3. But you travel away to some grounds, and just off the top of my head, Tranmere Rovers was one who had a big marquee outside, both sets of fans mingling in there. That went down really well with both clubs, and it seems to be a concept that is appearing more and more and more throughout the Football League. I think Shrewsbury is an interesting case because I personally think we needed it as a club. And you look at where our stadium is, and you look at the amenities around the stadium, and it's for away fans. You speak to them, and it's not a great away day. In all honesty, you can go to the Charles Darwin, you can go to the Brooklands, or you can go to pubs in the town centre. But for actual drinking facilities or pre-match facilities before the game, there's nothing really around the vicinity at the Montgomery Waters Meadow. So yeah, I think the fan zone was very much needed, and looking forward to seeing how it goes next season as well when we can get back there.
Spot on.
Yeah.
With regards to, I've got to ask you about this as well, Scott. I, self-confessed, can't really get to many games. Vorney definitely gets to a few. Coyney gets to a few with his media work with Aberystwyth Town, and of course, being a Shoes Town fan, he's everywhere with that. What I wanted to talk about was you did 5 games in one day. How did that come about?
That would be August 2006, and Hamilton had organised an under-19 international tournament right at the start of the season with 6 teams. So it was Hamilton and Hibs from Scotland. It was Blackburn and West Ham from England, Bayer Leverkusen from Germany, and Cruzeiro from Brazil. So the games were, I think, 6 and 8 o'clock on the Friday night. The games were then 10, 12, 6 and 8 on the Saturday, and then you had the various 5th and 6th, 3rd and 4th, and final, etc. on the Sunday. And it was also match day 1 of the opening Scottish League season that same weekend. So Hamilton were away at Gretna. So I was staying behind at the stadium to organise all these youth games. So I did also saw the game at 10 o'clock, the game at 12 o'clock. Gretna unfortunately beat Hamilton 6-0, so thankfully I missed that. And I was there for the games at 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock. But Blantervic's ground is only 5 minutes from Hamilton's ground. So the game's at 10 and 12, and the game at 12 o'clock I finished by 10 to 2. So, right, guys, there's the showers, blah, blah, blah. Somebody else can clean up. I went to watch Blantervic's at 2 o'clock. 4 o'clock back at our stadium, ready in good time for the game at 6 o'clock. So, yes, I saw 5 games in the one day, albeit 4 of them were at the one stadium.
I'll tell you what, it's still 5 games, isn't it?
Over the course of that whole week, it was actually 16 games in 7 days.
That's incredible. Again, I allude to my 10 games a season. I'm pathetic. And if the wife's listening, then you're making me look bad.
Mind you, Scott, I guess some of the ground hops that we do from time to time, those are weekends where we fill with a lot of games, aren't we? I mean, I haven't done 5, but I've done, and you will have done probably 4 quite regularly. I would have thought we've done 4 quite regularly.
Yeah. It's not uncommon. 3 is very common.
Yeah.
3 is very common in a day. 4 a little bit less so. 5 is is pretty rare probably. Unless you get schools games and all sorts of things. But this was 4 under-19 games in a in a non-league match.
I've definitely not done 5.
Yeah.
That's your challenge, mate. That's your challenge. And then that alludes to the next point, Scott. Over 7,000 games attended since 1980. Well, since you started logging them in 1980. Now, that is just unreal. I mean, obviously, I've got to be honest. The job that you've got, I'm so jealous because the football you get to go see obviously plays a big part in that. But talk me through it. Obviously, it was never a target in your head. I should imagine you never stood there and thought, I'm going to do 7,000 games. But how did it come like that?
Just enjoyment. Nothing more than enjoying it. As I mentioned, I'd rather stand and watch an amateur game 5 minutes away, or even obviously with travelling and everything else this season. I went down with another guy, Duncan Mackay, that Lee will know as well.
Yeah.
We actually met at Market Drayton now on the season.
That's
Duncan
right,
and I had nothing to do on Tuesday nights. We went and watched a Sunday Amateur Cup final in Carlisle, on a Tuesday night, for example. It gets you out of the house. It lets you see something new, something different. I'm very much a firm believer that even in those 7,000 games, you will see something new, something different, a talking point in every single game. I heard an interview with Arsene Wenger recently. He was in Desert Island Discs a couple of months ago, and he came up with some wonderful sayings. Obviously, he's very philosophical, very cute, chooses his words very carefully. And he said, simply, every football game is different. If you go to the opera or you go to the theatre or arts, it's the same play 5 nights a week, times 30 years. It's the same pop group singing the same songs. It's the same, theatre, whatever it happens to be. Whereas football changes every match, every day, every hour. Football's an incredible entertainment that you cannot compare with many other forms of entertainment. Another thing that Arsene Wenger came out with too was the presenter asked him, what do you enjoy about football? And his answer was wonderful. I love watching other managers suffer. That was my reaction as well. And I thought, and he expanded to me, said, "It's your turn now, my friend. It's 5 defeats in a row. It's your turn now. And you can, if you know football and you're passionate, you can understand exactly what he means by that. He's not saying it in any way a nasty way or putting whatever manager it is down. It's just simply we've all been there, and that's what it is. And again, game of opinions and all sorts of things as well. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. 2 nice, cute comments from Mr. Wenger.
He's incredible.
It's the people you meet as well, Scott, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think when me and Dan were talking very originally, we did one of the interviews, one of the Tales of a Groundhopper. I think you asked me, Dan, didn't you, about some of the days out and you kind of go. And then I always find coming north of the border to see you guys, the Scottish juniors and that, absolutely wonderful in terms of the people you meet and people you get talking to. And certainly if they hear an English accent, they want to know where you've come from, how far you've come, why you've come here, blah, 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 blah. And I think, as Scott will know very well, if the bottle of whiskey comes out and you end up sort of in the committee room, then you're normally in trouble, aren't you? It's there's a few times I've been dragged in. It's like, come on in.
Yeah, it's quite funny. We actually had a reserve game during the week against Queen's Park, a closed door. The lower leagues in Scotland all restarted this weekend, so they've been playing friendly to get themselves going. And I was recounting a tale to the Queen's Park president of my very first ever whiskey. And it was at a reserve game between Queen's Park and Hamilton at Old Lesser Hampden back in the late 1980s. And the then Queen's Park president, the wonderful old school gentleman called Davy Letham, who'd been president of the league over the years too, he poured me a whiskey at half time. And I was about 21 or 22, and I was driving the Accies Reserves minibus that night, and he poured me a whiskey that filled the complete glass, the proverbial choke a horse. And I thought, what the hell am I going to do with this? But you're polite, you're polite, so you take it and you're sipping it. I couldn't even put any water in it or lemonade or anything else. There was no room to put anything in it. I'm thinking, I spent the whole 45 minutes of second half in the wee committee room watching the game from upstairs. I mean, to wait till about an hour after the game, so I was fit enough to drive the night bus back to Hamilton. And that was my first whiskey I got making. But as you say, a bottle comes out and you can't say no, and it's nice to be friendly, hospitable. I mean, nowadays there's no drinking games. I can recall after every match, up till the early 90s, there was always a steward from the club into the referee's room with a tray with 3 pints of beer and 3 whiskies. And that happened at every single match, first team reserves. It just stopped all of a sudden overnight. Drink driving laws, all sorts of things, social conscious now that we have nowadays. But I mean, up to the early 90s, I've seen some referees still in the social clubs till 11 o'clock midnight after a Saturday game, enjoying the crack with the fans, the bingos on the background, all sorts of things. And that's even at the Scottish Championship level. These things were very, very common up till maybe 25 years ago.
I'm going to keep the question about Scotland for later on in the show, because you are going to stick with us, and I think it'd probably be good to have your opinion with regards to the qualifiers coming up. We are going to come back, and guys, as I said, if you've got any questions for Scott, getting them in, happy to ask as much as we can. I do want to just touch on some non-league updates in England. Scott, you probably, the amount of games you go to, I imagine you probably know all the clubs anyway. So this week, quite sad really that we had to read that Steve Dale, the virus that he is to do with Bury, however you say it, tried to fight the whole copyright about the club badge, didn't he? Did you hear about that, guys?
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Absolute joke of a man. Now, luckily enough, Bury were able to win that. They've managed to keep the club badge, and I think that's absolutely incredible because it actually includes the town coat of arms in it. I just can't understand why this bloke won't just bugger off and leave that poor club alone.
Well, yeah, I couldn't sum it up any better than that, really, Dan, to be quite honest. Yeah, why doesn't he? I don't know. I don't know what the issue is there, but I mean, obviously the right conclusion has been made with the town of Bury and fans being able to keep their badge. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's fantastic for the club. And also, with regards to fans, and you might be able to have a bit of an say about this as well, Scott. Fans this week, they've said they're not coming back anytime soon, it looks like. It's a whole process that's going on in England at the moment, especially where all these non-league teams and non-league organisations are trying to arrange these tournaments and friendlies just to try and get the football going for the clubs. And to name a few here, we've got the Southern Combination Football League, Spartan South Midlands Football League, the Manchester Football League, Essex Senior League, Herts Senior County League, Essex and Suffolk Border Football League, West Midlands Regional League, which is where we are, and the Central Midlands Football League, to name a few, that are desperately trying to get these competitions together to just raise money and try and keep afloat. And then the FA come out and say fans aren't coming back, and you're not having fans in there yet. And it's like, why allow football to come back if they're not going to allow the fans to go in there and pay their money and help promote and get the club going? I allude to this, and you guys are probably the same. And if you're listening in the comments, let me know what you think. Again, I went to Aldi yesterday to get me shopping for the week, and I'm stood toe to toe with different people shuffling past you. Don't listen to the rules. Don't have any care for the rules. And I think, how different is that then? What's the difference in going to a football game where you are told you have to stay away from each other? You are given places to go to. What's so different in that than going to the supermarket where no one's experiencing it? And I just think there's such a problem arising in this. They're giving the clubs a chance to do something, but then they're taking their wings away from them before they can even fly, really.
Yeah, the issue, I think, Dan, the issue is it's not the game of football itself that's the issue. We can all play games of football, whether it's Liverpool v Man U or down in West Midlands League, Division 6A, for example. The game of football is not the problem. It's everything that surrounds the game of football. It's whether it's the mums and dads dropping off the kids or a youth match, whether it's the people that want to come and watch the game, whether it's the social club, bar staff. It's all the surroundings. It's all the people that add on. You've got 22 players and 3 match officials on the park. You then want to go for the minimum number of one coach, one physio, one doctor, one person shouting sort of thing. But then it's the 50 people that are involved in dropping off a player or whatever it happens to be, or the medical staff. It's all the additional things that surround the game of football. And I have to think, from the governmental point of view, it's areas that you have to minimise the risk. And that's why, it's no fans right now. It's minimising, players have to come in individual cars and all sorts of things. It's everything else that surrounds the game of football that's the problem. Now, in a normal sense, that would be, 100 guys leaving the local pub at 5 minutes to 3 and still getting in the turnstiles before the game kicks off. The days of that happening are gone. 100 guys now arriving at a turnstile at 5 to 3, spaced out 2 metres apart, ain't going to happen and get you all in kick-off time. Then you've been in the pub for the previous hour. You're all going to want to go to the toilet together. That ain't happening either. You'll be queuing to half time to go to the toilet. I mean, 4 pints in even the previous hour. We've all been there. It's all these additional risks that's causing, I think, the issue in returning fans to football right now. It's not as simple as we can all stand 2 metres apart. Of course we can. There's 90,000 empty seats at Wembley right now. You can have 1,000 folk standing. You can't even shout to each other. You'll be that far apart. That's not the issue. It's the underground getting there. It's going for a pint. It's buying a programme. I mean, when programmes, a lot of them are online now, or clubs aren't doing them at all. But I mean, one of the protocols we read this season was, if you're going to sell programmes, the programmes are going to be in the face mask, the shield, the PPE, and have a contactless card reader, for a £2.50 programme, whatever it happens to be. The costs involved at non-league levels you're talking about, for clubs to have 4 programme sellers and full PPE and contactless card readers, it's all these issues that you don't think about. It's that's in my opinion, that's stopping fans at all levels returning in any great numbers right now. You might have 150 at Step 6, or with 300 at Ross County and Aberdeen earlier on this season, things like that. Very low crowds. I think it's some in the Premiership, a couple of thousand back in November, December in England. But I mean, it's everything that surrounds the game of football. It's how you get there. It's the bus, it's the underground, it's the pint, it's the bookies putting on your coupon. It's all the things that you do that increase all these risks that affect the mitigation that we have. The game will take place. The players are fine. The referees are fine. The medical staff and the surroundings and the organisation, the safety and security, all these things are fine, but we can't provide the service.
It's good to hear that from you.
I think it's that's affecting it.
Yeah, it's good to hear it from a different perspective, because, Coyney, you're heavily involved in grassroots football, aren't you? And I fear that you're going to end up, when your game's start in a couple of weeks, you're going to have loads of people coming to watch the games. I really think that as well. I think you're going to have people just want to catch any bit of football that they can, aren't they?
I'm not so sure.
Me and Vorney will be there.
In all honesty, I think it's a nice thought to think people would want to come and watch Sunday League football. I think the reality is when you get up in April and it's still cold outside, I think there'll be much better things for people to do, in all honesty. So I personally don't anticipate any issues with large crowds at Sunday League games. In answer to your question, Dan, sorry, that's not the answer you want to hear. But that's my.
Mate, this is what this is about. I'd rather you give that answer than just go along with me.
I think what I'd say on that, Dan, actually, without just to butt in on that, I think some of the non-league games I went to, sort of September, October time. I mean, there were a couple of games like Shifnal. They had their FA Cup game that was all ticket. There was a couple of games that were all ticket, but generally in the main, albeit that I think games sort of locally were probably getting a few more people through the turnstiles. As Coyney says, I don't think there was quite the clamour for people to go to games as you think. If I'm being brutally honest.
Yeah,
I think attendances were up. I wouldn't deny that, but I think in terms of maybe 800 turning up at Market Drayton on a Monday night when Scott was there with Duncan, that wasn't happening. The game was definitely better than it would normally be, but I agree with Coyney. I don't think you're going to get 100 people turning up on a Sunday morning to watch Coyney's lot, if I'm honest.
So there's a lot of people though throughout Europe too right now are not keen to go to a game because they're still wary, to use that word, for a whole variety of reasons. Back in the autumn, the Czech top division, for example, was allowing sort of 50% plus 200, so capacity-wise, but the fans were not turning out anywhere near those numbers because they didn't feel safe themselves. The Israeli Premier League, the Israeli top division, allowed spectators from last weekend, and this is very interesting actually, because this is a potential forward scenario for us. Israel, as I think we've seen from the news, is one of the most vaccinated countries in the world right now. They're ahead of population anyway, and the UK I think is close behind Israel percentage-wise. But Israel allowed fans last week. The stadium has to have a minimum 10,000 seats. If that's the case, they can get in a maximum 1,500 fans, vaccinated fans only, no under 16s, no away fans. And the ticket prices were increased by 30%, to allow for all the compensation, reduced crowds. But even though they were allowed 1,500, only 800 to 900 were turning up. But it was the fact that vaccinated fans only, no away fans and no kids. That's very interesting.
So, I mean,
that's one I think might get carried forward. Clearly, no kids because they're not vaccinated yet. And for no other reason than that, but they could still harbour it, not have symptoms, spread it, all sorts of things. No away fans too, again, to minimise travelling and all the rest of it, albeit most of the Israeli teams all ground share with each other. But that's not the point. No away fans minimises travel. Vaccinated only is a clear way ahead. And I would like to think that all these government timetables we're seeing in the news, by early autumn, by late summer, the whole adult population in the UK will have been vaccinated. So I thought that was very interesting by the Israelis following that method that they'd actually chosen, and you can see the logic in it.
I think playing devil's advocate, should I say? I think someone's got a son in the background. Playing devil's advocate, Vorney, you said that people weren't turning out in their hundreds and hundreds to see these games. So why can't we just go back to allowing them if that's the case? I get it. I completely get what you're saying. I just feel like that if you can allow people to go to the bloody supermarket, they should be allowed to go into the bloody field and watch a game. But that's just me. Steve Pinder also says he might be Scottish. That's under. He might be Scottish, but get Scott to the FA. The man speaks sense. Scott, I'm inclined to agree with Steve. Craig's also said, do you not think that British football public historically turn up in greater numbers per capita than the majority of countries throughout the world? Well, yeah, definitely. Yeah. We love the game, don't we? We absolutely love the game. Good question, that one. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, the problem we've got, as I said, if we just wait, I think I'm one of the people here, I'll be completely honest, we're just waiting that little bit longer until we get back to the game. We've waited this long. What's a bit more time? I don't know. It's just itching, I think is the word, itching to get back there. I'm looking forward to the next segment now. We are waiting for just one more person. He'll be here shortly. But just to give you a bit of an update, we did an England squad selection for the World Cup qualifiers last week, and I'd like to say most of my selections were actually quite good, bar Patrick Bamford, but Bamford should have been in the squad.
Oh dear!
But this week, as I've said, we are moving on to the England, Wales, and Scotland World Cup qualifiers. Now we've got David waiting in the wings, a Welsh fan. It's always nice to have one of them, and we've also got Scott on the show, and we've got Doug coming shortly, who is a Scotland fan. So, if you've got your thoughts and your comments of where you think your countries are going to be finishing, please get them in below. Before we do that, I will ask Scott one last question. How far do you think Scotland can get through to the Euros? How far do you think they can honestly go?
Well, as we all know, it's much mentioned in the press and much known for Scotland fans too. 1998 was the last time that we qualified for a major tournament. And that was the World Cup in France, and I was lucky enough to be at the three Scotland games that took place then against Brazil, Norway and Morocco. Also went to the final to the World Cup in 98 as well, which was probably, as a fan, my greatest achievement in football, we're going to the final. So it's right now Scotland's done really, really well just to get here. We've been traditionally finishing third in the group, or just very, very unlucky, for the last 20 years. But there's been a real togetherness and a real bond and a real like a club type scenario in the international team over the past 18 months. And the fact that every game we play is against Israel for some strange reason, every competition, Nations League, Euro qualifiers, and again next week in World Cup qualifiers, we keep playing Israel now. And sometimes you get that wee purple sign over a team and all the rest of it. Scotland's hit a wee bit of a purple patch right now, certainly. We're deservedly in the Euros this summer. More than deservedly in the Euros. We deserve to be there. We fought well to get there. It's a very tough group between Czech and Croatia and England, no doubt about that. But, I mean, the derby is against England. It's going to be at Wembley, but it counts for nothing. I mean, I was there in 99, for example. Don Hutson scored to win 1-0 at Wembley, albeit England won 2-0 a couple of days earlier at Hampden in the first leg. But, I mean, I've seen us win. Scotland have regularly won abroad in England, and we won in Germany too, in fact, as well. When about that same year, 99 in Bremen. It's a derby match. The form goes out the window. So there's no reason why we can't go down there and get a deserved and rightful win over England.
The boys at Fan of Fan podcast took the words out of my mouth. It's England is coming home, maybe, finally. Who knows? Now, before we bring the boys
as long
in...
as they don't hear any awful songs in the summer, that's all.
You can beat Anthony Dex. I think that's probably the worst.
Are we not going to bring out another tune after 98?
I reckon we should.
Oh, good God.
I reckon
we could.
You've heard it here first. Now, before we bring the lads in, it's only right that they have an intro. Welcome, gents. Welcome, Dave and Doug. How you doing, both?
All right.
Good, thank you.
Excellent stuff. Thanks for coming on the show. Lots to talk about. Sounds like the start of a bad joke, this, doesn't it? 3 Englishmen, 2 Scotsmen, and a Welshman in a chat room. What could go wrong? So, and guys, if you're watching, obviously get your comments in. We're happy to read them out as much as we can. But first and foremost, let's go to the Scottish boys. You've got some tough fixtures coming this over the next couple of games. How do you see yourselves getting on? Obviously, first and foremost, going out be there to is it away or at home to Austria?
Home.
Home.
How do you see it going?
If we take a maximum of 7 points from these first 3 games, I'll be happy. Austria is going to be very, very hard. The majority of their squad is Bundesliga based, so that is going to be very, very tricky. The fact that we've got Che Adams in the squad is a big, big plus, even though he's from Leicester, but he's a Scottish grandparent. That's why he's in the Scotland squad. But I look at these games. I mean, the Austria game is, a very tough one to start with, and then we go away to Israel. And look, I can't remember the last time we won in Israel, so that's been a wee while. And then we have the Faroe Islands, who, if everyone remembers 2002, 2003, the Bertie Votes days, we scraped a 2-2 draw away in Faroe Islands. So
you were losing
2-0,
Doug, weren't you?
Yeah, we were.
We were, yeah.
yeah, we were. So I'm hopeful that we don't actually slip up against the Faroes again. But if you ask me for 7 points from these first 3 games, I will definitely take it.
What about you,
Yeah,
Scott?
I'd agree with that. It'd be a good target. 7 from 9. I mean, to me, the toughness is it's 3 games in 6 days. That's not really so much who you're playing. 3 games in 6 days against anybody at any level is not ideal, but it's the circumstances, it's the hand that we've been dealt with right now, with the curtailed fixture list and everything else. So to me, Austria at home, who knows how weakened they could be come Thursday, but I mean, Austria are still Austria, whether they're missing players through travel restrictions or not. Israel, as we've said, they are always very tough, although I think this one's going to be in Tel Aviv, as opposed to the recent games in Haifa. And then the Faroes at home, again, potential banana skin, but it's one that you simply have to win. So I'd agree there, 7 out of 9 would be great, and ideally 9 out of 9.
I've got a comment here, fan of fan podcast, Dan to remake the world in motion. Yeah, I could easily do that. You've not seen me on a Saturday night at a karaoke bar, mate. If we go to, I'll just bring them up here. So we've got the fixtures there. So, that's a gift, that is. So Sunday away at Israel, and then we've got the Faroe Isles at home. You say, and you're quite right in saying there, 7 points from 9. Does that show where you guys have come as a nation in football in terms of the last 12, 18, well, I say 2 years, in the way the players you've got coming through there? I mean, you've still got McSauce, a.k.a. McTominay, playing at centre-back, which I think he'd do a better job for you in the midfield. But as a spine of a team, you've got a really good, strong, solid team there, haven't you?
Yeah, there's a lot of players coming through now. I think, you've got your McGinns, and as you say, your McSauces. Like, okay, had a bit of a poor game today, but I actually like him at centre back. I think he has actually thrived at centre back, and we are very problematic at centre back. Left back we're absolutely fine. We've got Kieran Tierney and Andy Robertson. Two of the best left backs in the the Premier League. Well, obviously not this season, I would say, for Robbo, but you would obviously say I think right back's a big problem. They're trying to get James Tavernier, from what I've been hearing as well. That would be a very good. A good try to get him for right back. But yeah, we've got some very, very good players coming through. Obviously, Lyndon Dykes, Che Adams. You've got Stuart Armstrong, Ryan Fraser. It's a very, very good, hard-working team. But, the fact that we got to the Euros against Serbia in a penalty shootout was absolutely magnificent. So, confidence will be high in the Scotland camp for sure.
So I'll go round the table here. So we've got 7 points from 9, Scott and Doug. Dave, how many points do you reckon out the first 3 games they can get?
My heart says 9, obviously. The brain actually says, fingers crossed, 7.
You think 7? Vorney?
Fingers crossed.
Well, obviously, we would like 9, wouldn't we? We'd like 9.
We're talking about Scotland.
Oh, he's still about Scotland.
Talking about Scotland, mate.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about England then. Sorry.
I thought you were talking about Wales.
I thought Dave thought you were talking about Wales. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so did I.
We're talking about Scotland. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. There you go. That's dragged it. Scotland. Yeah. I thought confident you would get 7. To be quite. I think certainly Scotland have come up leads and bounds in the last 18 months to 2 years, and like you said, deservedly got through to the Euros this summer. They got some decent players. They got decent squad there. I would say if you went back 3 or 4 years ago, Austria away, you'd probably look at that and think, yeah, probably Austria are going to win that. Not anymore. Not anymore. It's Austria that will fear that fixture now. They will look at Scotland and think, yeah, we're going to need to be on top of our game if we're going to take 3 points against this. You wouldn't even bet against Austria looking at that and thinking, actually, a draw against Scotland at home isn't a bad result. So if these guys are saying 7, I'll go with that. Yeah, I mean, I think, the Faroes, you're going to beat the Faroes. Israel will be the game. I think you'll beat Israel. Point against Austria, it's not unrealistic. Not at all.
Dave, I'll come back to you, Dave. Dave will go, none.
Who are we talking about now?
We're going back to Scotland, mate. We'll get to Wales, don't worry.
Israel away, you'll just scrape them, I reckon. You'll beat them by 1 goal, 1-0 or something like that, or 2-1, because they'll just stick 11 men behind the ball. Same as the Faroe Islands, you should get 3 points off them. Austria, you've got a chance. You've got a good chance. So I'd say a minimum of 4, maximum 7. Could be lucky. It could get all 9.
Coyney, what do you reckon, bud?
That's some good.
I'm going between 7 and 9. Probably play safe and say 7. But I'd also back Scotland to get out of the group in the Euros. I think they'll do it this year. So 7 points.
Well, I'm going to be a right tosser. I think you're going to get 5 points. I think you'll draw against Austria. I think you'll draw in Israel. I think you'll beat. I think you'll beat the Faroe Islands. So I'm going to go 5. Please don't hate me too much, people of Scotland.
I'll tell you what, though, Dan. Even if Scotland did do that, as long as then Scotland win their home games, then they're still going to qualify, aren't they? So, as long as you win your home games, you're going to be okay.
The feeling behind it for me is the amount of football at least that the lads in the Scottish team are having to play at the moment, and this goes for the England squad as well. They're having to play a lot of football with not much rest because we're trying to cram it all in before the season finishes. I just wonder if some of them will be suffering from a bit of tiredness, to be honest. We go across now to the Wales fixtures. Now, Wales have, I'm not going to try that GIF again because I went wrong, Belgium at home, Belgium away, and then they've got Czech Republic at home the following week. Now, that's a tough couple of games in the World Cup qualifiers for anyone. Dave, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, we've done the last couple of years. We played Belgium off the top of my head 3 times and haven't lost to them. Anyway, I think we drew 0-0 out there, beat them 1-0, and then we beat them in the Euros, as I regularly tell Lee Vaughan whenever I see him.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, thanks, Dave.
So I've listened to other people on various YouTube channels or whatever. So a lot of the Welsh fans are confident that the boys will get something out of the Belgium away match. However, as you've won so many games against that one particular team, at some point they're going to turn around and give you a smack. So we might get a 0-0 or a 1-1. Equally, we could end up losing 3 or 4-0. So I'm hoping that we go away and we come back with a draw against Belgium.
And what about Czech? Can you see you beating the Czech?
Yes.
Big shout there. Big shout. All right, and how many points? So how many points are you saying then from the first 2 games?
First 2 games, 4.
4 points. Scott, a man of much football knowledge. What are your thoughts on the fixtures there for Wales?
Well, it's okay saying they're playing Belgium and Czech. They're also playing Mexico in a friendly in the middle of those 2 games. And again, like Scotland, they're facing 3. They're like Scotland. They're now facing 3 games in 6 days, friendly or not. Everyone's going to treat it as a competitive match and play, for a place against the Czech Republic, depending how, of course, the Belgium game is gone. So again, it's a very tough schedule. It's like playing, the Boxing Day and New Year week, in the leagues when you've got 3-4 fixtures in an 8-day spell normally. And we always hear the managers complain at that time of the year about that. So again, it's slightly surprising. My only surprise here is that the Wales have chosen to add in a friendly into an already crammed fixture list. That's the slight surprise here. And that therefore adds to the interesting, scenarios and conundrums here. It's 2 very, very tough games. Belgium are clearly one of the top teams in the world, but then Wales have got Bale and others too that are top players also. So it would be wonderful if Wales could get something from Belgium. They wouldn't be favourites, that would be clear to say. Czech Republic at home, it's a home game. and we're always capable of winning games at home.
How many points do you reckon then?
3.
3 points. I'm going to come to Coyney next because Dave's always giving Coyney stick on the live show for his Aberystwyth connection. So I'm going to go to Coyney now. Coyney, you're heavily involved, obviously, with Aberystwyth Town. So Welsh football, is something that you keep an eye on. What do you think about the first 2 fixtures for them in the World Cup qualifiers, and what do you see them getting from them?
I'll be honest. There's a couple of things in the back of my mind. I think there's the potential for a bit of unrest in the Welsh squad at the moment, with the fact that the manager isn't actually going to be there for the 3 games. It's Robert Page, the assistant manager, who's actually going to be taking the games, and obviously there seems to be a lot of uncertainty around Ryan Giggs and his position as the national team manager at the moment. Will that be passed on to the players, and will it affect them not having their the manager there for the 3 games? I look at Belgium and, to be honest, name me a better side in world football at the moment on paper. They've got De Bruyne. They've got so many good players. You can go right through their team, and they've just got quality. So, as much as I like to say I can see Wales going out there and getting something against Belgium, I can't see it. In all honesty, Czech Republic at home. I mean, the Czechs don't have as strong a squad as what they once had, and getting to the finals 25 years ago, and I think they had a good spell maybe 15 or so years ago as well. They're not what they once were. I could certainly see Wales beating the Czech Republic, but Belgium, I just can't see it. I thought there was a few funny choices in the squads as well, if I'm honest. There's some League Two players getting chosen when there was some Championship players and players who were performing well in the Championship being left out. So again, I wasn't quite sure what the reasoning behind that was, but yeah, 3 points for me.
3 points. I'll come to you, Doug. Now, Doug, you obviously, your podcast, World of Football. So I'm talking to a chap who does cast his eye across a lot of football played out there. What are your thoughts on the 2 games, mate? And what do you see Wales doing?
I think it's great to get the Belgium away game out of the way very, very quickly. I mean, they're, as Coyney says, they're one of the best teams in world football right now. Like, this is their golden generation. The problem I have with Belgium, they always seem to underperform. And I'm worried that they might underperform at the Euros, where everyone is expecting them to do very, very well. Along with Belgium, I would probably say Portugal and France have probably got, 2 of the better squads as well. I do agree in the sense that Robert Page as a manager is a big headache for sure. They're going to have to make a decision on Ryan Giggs, because the longer this drags out, the longer it's going to take them to get like a replacement. And I'm not sure Robert Page is the man for Wales, in all honesty. But I'm talking of the 2 games. I mean, we beat the Czech Republic home and away. But one of those games, Czech Republic actually had a completely new squad because of obviously the COVID crisis as well. So I can see Wales winning against the Czech Republic at the Cardiff City Stadium. I'm going to be more optimistic. I think you'll get a draw out at Belgium. I think you'll get a draw. So I'm going to go 4 points.
4 points. Doug there, sticking up for the Welsh. Dave, you can send him the money after the show. Vorney, what's your thoughts, mate?
Well, I think the advantage that Wales have got actually is that they're playing like Doug has alluded to there. They're getting the Belgium away game out of the way first up, aren't they? So if you're going to catch Belgium cold, then that's probably the time to play them in the first game. Albeit that actually Wales didn't start their last qualifying campaign particularly well, and then sort of grew into it and obviously sort of qualified quite well towards the end with winning games. But at start off, they were caught cold as well. You wouldn't probably expect Wales to go there and get a result. So anything that they do kind of get, I don't think you're going to get beaten 3 or 4 as Dave thought that he might get smacked. I don't think that'll be the case, because I think Wales are a decent side, but he could go there and nick a draw. Your heart would probably say that that's probably not going to be the case, but It's possible. Czech Republic at home, I would fancy Wales to win that. So certainly 3 points from that. There could be a bonus point from the Belgium game as well, possibly. But Wales have got the sign over them, so anything's possible. But you would probably expect at least 3 points from those two games.
3 points, okay. I'm in the same camp as Doug in the sense of Belgium having this golden generation. I don't think they'll win anything, and you can clip me on that. I kind of feel like they're England, like England were sort of 2004 to 2008. They had that golden generation of players that should have done so much more, but were sadly undermined by managers who didn't know how to pick players in positions they were meant to be playing in. And I just kind of feel like Belgium are the Nurley story. Now, Scott obviously been involved in the UEFA side of it. Scott, how the hell have they got to number one in the bloody world? How the hell are they ranked number one in the world when they've not? For me, if you're number one, it's because you've won a tournament. It's as simple as that. Maybe I'm old fashioned, but these points they get from friendlies and qualifiers, it's ridiculous.
Well, first of all, it's FIFA rankings, and Belgium are top of the world, number one in rankings for a lengthy period, because they're so consistent. Bottom line, whether it's friendlies, whether it's qualifiers, it's weighted. It's based, I think, 5 yearly cycles. Whether you're playing the Faroes based on their ranking, whether you're playing England or Germany based on their ranking. So Belgium are number one based on results, nothing more, nothing less. It's a very simple game.
Simple game I don't like. Okay, so for me, I've got to be honest, Dave. I think the way that, and I've just bashed them, but I think Belgium, the form that some of their players are in at the moment, I think they're going to put through a free pasture. Czech Republic, I think that these games have come at the wrong time for Wales. I think with the whole gig situation, I kind of feel like that Wales perhaps should have, the Welsh FA should have perhaps backed their manager and said, look, we want him there. We want him as our manager. He's done the job to take them to the Euros. I think he should still be there now. But
there's a reason he's not, though, Dan. Sorry, there's a reason he's not.
Innocent till proven guilty, though, Coyney. He's innocent till proven guilty. That's the way I go with every situation. He's not been charged yet.
They must have a good reason for him not to be there.
Well, I still think innocent till proven guilty, but I'm going to go 3 points with the rest of you. I think 3 points. I think you'll get the win against Czech Republic, but sadly, I think you'll come up a bit short against Belgium. Next, we come on to obviously the main guys, the guys.
San Marino.
San Marino. The winners of
Northern Ireland.
The Northern Ireland. The winners of the Euros, in my eyes.
Portugal.
I'm not talking about Portugal. You can keep trying to banter me. We've got England coming up now. England have got San Marino at home, Albania away, Poland at home. Now, I mean, I'm still of the opinion. San Marino, Christ Almighty, it's going to be a bloodbath for him. I think Harry Kane's going to get that bit closer to the England record goals wise. So I don't even count that as a bloody game. It'll be a thrashing. I personally think England will take 9 from 9 there. I can't see, other than obviously Lewandowski being in electric form, the guy is just unreal. He's unreal. I mean, as he's getting older, he's one of these players that still just seems to maintain that high standard in his game. And I think he's the only problem we kind of face there. I think England will get 3 games out of 3 games. I'm going to come to you first, Scott. What do you think?
I can recall San Marino taking the lead against England in Serra Valley many years ago.
9 seconds, wasn't it?
Have to watch. England need to watch early on for the game next Thursday. On paper, of course, that's 3 points. That goes without saying. But football's not played in paper, and San Marino did take the lead against England many years back. Albania away for me is a very, very tricky fixture. Whether you're anywhere in the Balkans, different culture, also other things come into play as well. There's no fans, which reduces it to a base level straight away. But that to me is a very tricky fixture. There is no doubt that the Albanians will be. This is like a World Cup final for them, for example. It's a huge match, whether they're playing England, Germany, Spain, France. So that's going to be a tough game for England. And a draw, to me, would not surprise me in that game there. Poland at home, again, Polish football up and down in recent years. but as an international team, always to be very highly regarded and very wary. So I can see a win against San Marino. I wouldn't be surprised if the game in Albania was drawn. And we mentioned earlier on, you always have to look to win your home games. So you'd like to think that they would beat Poland at home, but again, who knows?
Are you saying this because I only said 5 points for the Scots?
It'll be between 5 and 7.
5 and 7. Oh, controversial. Dave, I'll come to you next, mate. What do you reckon?
You'll either walk away with 7 points or 9 points.
Yeah, I like that.
You'll beat San Marino quite easy. Albania, yeah. You'll probably score the opening goal in something like the 80th minutes because they'll just stick everybody behind the ball. Eventually, you'll break them down. Poland, on paper as well, you should beat them. The worst you'll do is a draw against them. I can't see Poland causing England any threat. So a minimum of 7, maximum of 9.
Okay, I'm happy with that. You can come on again, Dave. Doug, what are we thinking, brother?
Tongue in cheek. Everything's tongue in cheek.
Of course.
I mean, is there any point in discussing the San Marino game? Because look, I mean, you could play a group of kids, and they'd probably beat San Marino. Honestly, San Marino are so poor. Yeah, I think you'll absolutely batter San Marino. I'm thinking 6, maybe 7-0. I think I'm thinking about that. Albania, I actually agree with Scott. I think that's a really, really difficult away game. There's been a lot of political problems down in Albania as well, but I do believe in the past. So I think it's a very tricky. I think it's a banana skin for England, in all honesty. But I do see you going to Albania and winning. I'm going to disagree on Poland. I think Poland might beat England. Lewandowski can actually win a game on his own. So I'm going to say 6 points. I think Poland will beat England at Wembley.
Well, Doug, it was a pleasure having you on, mate. Obviously,
that's not nice.
That's not me for 6. That actually. I'll come to Coyney. Coyney, what are your thoughts, mate?
Obviously, I'm going to say 9.
Good lad.
But, did Albania qualify? Was it Euro 2016 or was it the World Cup?
Yes.
Two brothers
faced
each other, didn't they? Was it the Xhaka brothers?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
They were definitely Euro
sure,
2016. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So they're not, maybe, again, it's been highlighted a couple of times, maybe they're not a team to be taken lightly as you would maybe 10, 15 years ago. That said, I still think England have enough. I mean, we discussed this at length this time last week. I think England have enough to beat most teams. Most teams in world football at the moment. Poland, yes, they have one of, if not the best striker in the world at the moment. Maybe, well, if you take out Haaland, but again, I think England will have enough, particularly at home. So yeah, no argument for me. 9 points.
9 points. I'm happy to hear that. Vorney?
Well, I'm going to say 9 points, obviously, aren't I? So yeah, sure. I mean, like
Mr. England Supporters Club isn't going to go against 3.
Could I say 1 or 6 or whatever? Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I think we expect 9 points. San Marino, as Doug said, that's not even really up for discussion, really, is it? The Albania game is an interesting game because having been to a lot of England away games and going into the Balkans or sort of like the old Eastern European sort of bloc, they're difficult places to go. I mean, we've played Montenegro, I think 3 times over the last sort of 6-7 years, and everyone expects us when we go to Montenegro to win. Well, I've been to 2 of the 3 games, and we didn't win either of the 2 games I went to. We drew both of them, and I would look at sort of Montenegro and Albania as being as a similar sort of standard. So the home game against Albania, I would always say 3 points. The away game, it's a tricky one. I'm going to stick my neck on the line and say, yeah, we will win that. Poland at home again. The 2 games against Poland, I mean, I certainly would be happy with a draw away in Poland as long as you win your home game. So I'm going to say, yeah, we will win, but they are not easy games. You know, they're not these sort of games that the media sort of drum up and say, oh yeah, England are going to go out there and win every game 5 or 6-0. I hate it when we do that. San Marino, we might well do that. The other 2 games are actually, I think, very tricky games, but I think we will win all 3.
Okay. I'm happy to hear that. Very happy to hear that. Now, what I will ask is Scott and Doug. I'll ask this question before I believe Scott's got to go at 9, so I'm very mindful of that. I'm going to ask you this before I do. I'll just mention a couple of comments here. So Russell Cox thinks we'll get 9 points. Maybe with fans, Albania might have a chance. He then goes on and says we could face another. Oh my good God! Yeah, David. I can't even say that name. I'm gonna leave that to you boys to say that. I can't. I'm not even gonna bother.
David.
I've not had enough of these.
Galtieri.
There you go.
Galtieri, and then Jan Tomaszewski.
It's a goalkeeper, wasn't it?
Polish goalie.
Yeah,
Tomaszewski.
Goalkeeper.
Thanks for digging me out there, lad.
73, was it?
Polish with a Welsh surname.
Thanks for digging me out there. Spot on. And then we've also got Carl Brownbill says, good to see Lee Vaughan on here. Bump into him occasionally on Hops and other games. Good to see you on, Carl.
Good to see you, Carl.
Before I let you go, Scott, and I want to sort of touch on this. Who do you see as being your player of the tournament for the Euros? And I'll come to you next with that, Doug.
Wow. It's normally going to be whoever will be the top scorer. That'd be the obvious thing, would be the top scorer in the tournament. And I think that is wide open right now. It can be any one of the top, the top half dozen strikers in the top countries at the moment. I honestly don't. I would need to think about that. I would take a lot of thought, actually. But we mentioned Lewandowski there and all these kind of things too. It's going to be someone in that mould, someone that's a regular goal scorer that will lead his team to it. Will be the player of the tournament. I couldn't say who.
What about for Scotland? Who do you think is going to be the main guy for Scotland?
We mentioned earlier on too, and Doug also mentioned too. It's a very much like it's a very hard workmanlike team, was the phrase that Doug used as well. There's no great superstar. We've got Tierney and Robertson are outstanding young talents and extremely consistent at left back, especially the last couple of seasons. And they're also playing at a very high level. But Scotland are a really good side right now with a club type ethos behind them. No airs, no graces, no real superstars like a Dalglish or from the past, for example. We don't have a player of that calibre at the moment, but we have a very good squad that work and play and combine very well together. From Scotland's point of view, you might think it's going to be more defensively based. Therefore, you're looking at someone like Tierney or Robertson, for example, at the back to be our star player, I would say.
Spot on. What about you, Doug? Who's going to be? So I'll come to you first of all. Who's going to be the player of the tournament for you for Euro 2021? And then I'll come to you about who your main player is going to be for Scotland.
I'm going to say Cristiano Ronaldo for player of the tournament. I think this is his last tournament, in all honesty. I think he's going to have a mad one, and I think Portugal are going to do very, very well. I'm going to say Cristiano Ronaldo for player of the tournament. As far as Scotland are concerned, we've got some very, very good players coming through. But as Scott said, it'll be probably defensive-minded. So, but I like to be an optimist. So I'm going to go for one of the attacking players. I am going to go for Stuart Armstrong.
Stuart Armstrong, decent player. I like Stuart Armstrong. I do like him. Very, very technical footballer, actually. Good answer, David. I want your player. Face says it all. I want your player of the tournament for the Euros, and then I want who's going to be the main guy for Wales
for the tournament. Not a clue. I haven't even thought about it.
That's a hard question.
Yeah. So I mean, there's so many players out there. There's so many nations. Could be anybody. Could be just as easily Ronaldo as it could be Harry Kane. I don't know, anybody. Player for Wales, if he manages to stay fit, Aaron Ramsey.
I love Aaron Ramsey. Love Aaron Ramsey. What a player!
That's if he stays fit. If he doesn't, I'd like to see a good tournament for me for Ampadu.
Okay. I like that. Coyney, I'll come to you, mate. So player of the tournament for you, and then player who's going to light it up for England.
Two really easy answers for me, actually. I think the player of the tournament would be Kevin De Bruyne. I think he's an absolutely unbelievable player. And maybe the one thing that he hasn't done in his career so far is really light up an international tournament. I think he's at the right age now where he's going to do that. I think he's at his peak as a footballer, and yeah, he'd be my pick to be player of the tournament. For England, I'm really hoping that Phil Foden will have the same kind of impact that we saw from Rooney at 2004. Again, we discussed it at length last week what we think of Phil Foden, and I really believe he can do that as well. So two Man City players for me.
Spot on. Vorney, boo hiss by the way. Vorney, what about you, mate? Player of the tournament and player for England.
I'll go for Ronaldo. I think Portugal, like Doug said, I think it's his last tournament. So this is his last. This is his swan song, isn't it? So this is his final tournament. So I'm going to go for Ronaldo. I think Portugal have got a great side at the moment as well. Won the Nations League, everything else that sort of goes with that as well. So I'll go Ronaldo. For England, Harry Kane.
Very good, very good. For myself, it's the same person. I think it's Harry Kane. I think Harry Kane is just absolutely unbelievable. I think he's coming off the back of being. I think he won the Golden Boot at the World Cup, didn't he? Did he? Am I right in saying that?
Yeah,
he did. And I think he's just gonna carry on where he left off. He's an absolutely fantastic goal scorer. England have got lots and lots of creativity, bags of creativity behind him. So I think he'll go on and do well for us. Also, lads, just a quick one with regards to Ronaldo. I believe he came out and said Qatar is his last tournament. He said because next year, isn't it? So I think he said he's going to stick around for Qatar, and that will be his final one. But I mean, of course, I think he's going to have a fantastic tournament. He always does. Scott, I think we've kept you longer than we promised, haven't we?
No, it's not a problem. Not a problem.
Excellent stuff. I'm glad to hear that because there's a couple more stories I want to get out of you before you go. Actually, even better. So that's where we are with the World Cup, guys, with the World Cup qualifiers and with the Euros. Guys, get your comments in below if you want to let us know who you believe is going to light up the tournament, and let us know who you think for your country is going to do the business. Now, before we carry on, just show some love to the 90s revival in Shrewsbury. Now, guys, if you're local to Shrewsbury, if you're near Shropshire, in August they're going to be doing a couple of nights of absolute brilliant music. On the Friday night, you've got supporting local bands, the Ronaldos, Vertigo, Jordan Brown, Robbie Jones, London Calling, Crack On Daft, and 5 O'Clock Hero, along with a set from themselves. And you've also got on the Saturday, the 7th of August, I know Coyney will be thrilled at this, you've got Bradley from S Club 7 there, and you've also got Kelly.
Like an S Club party.
Correct, mate, completely correct. Tickets are on sale now, so if you follow the link that I'll put in the video below, you will be able to get your tickets sorted. I already have. So, with regards to before we go on to the talk about the football in Wales and what's been happening this week, Doug, you're more than welcome to stay around, mate. There's some stories coming out which I'm sure you'll be interested in. Scott. Sure. Tell us some more stories. You've got some absolute bangers. I believe Vorney wants you to tell us one in particular.
Nuremberg 2006 in Scott for the World Cup. I think we mentioned before, didn't we? And he said you got a story for that.
We did, yeah. England against Trinidad and Tobago. I'd flown over to, again, I just picked games at random for the World Cup in Germany. And it was England v Trinidad was the first game of the 5 that I did at the World Cup 2006. So I'd spent the first 2 or 3 days in Berlin, which a city I hadn't been to before. So 2 or 3 days in Berlin to get a feel for the place, the fan zones, and you do all the checkpoint Charlies and everything else. And on the morning of the England-Trinidad game, I'd booked a flight, only booked it 5 days before the game, only booked it, I think, the Sunday. And the flight from Berlin to Nuremberg was €1. And once, even with the taxes and the charges took up €7. So they've clearly got less taxes and charges than we have. So the 6:30 in the morning flight from Berlin to Nuremberg, there only were 6 people on the plane, which included the English TalkSport radio commentary crew and engineers. I think Rodney Marsh, I'm quite sure, was on the plane, for example. So there was me going to the game. I think there was 4 people from TalkSport and some, innocent German lady going about her daily ordinary business between Berlin and Nuremberg. But the airline it gets better. The airline was Deutsche BA, which was the then, I think, German equivalent of EasyJet. So only 6 people on the plane. The flight cost €1. As you boarded the plane, the 5 guys were given a copy of that month's Playboy. and the lady got the in-flight magazine, and it was the up to date. It was that month's Playboy. It was the June 2006 Playboy magazine. Which would have cost whatever it cost.
It's not this one here. It's Scott. I've got a personal collection.
But I mean, for your €1, you get a flight, your breakfast, the glass of wine, and the bonus magazine. I thought, well, maybe the best €1 you've ever spent in your life, all going down to an England game. And of course, on the bench for Trinidad and Tobago that day was Jason Scotland, who would later, of course, play at Hamilton Accies, my own team. So, long one story for that one as well. So that was the €1 flight story.
Well, you're up there in Scotland, aren't you, Doug? Who is it you follow? Is it Livingston you follow?
Livingston, yeah.
Big season for you. Got to the cup final as well, didn't you? Any stories for your travels, Doug, following your teams?
I suppose we could go back to probably the 2002-2003 UEFA Cup. I was how old was I at the time? So I would have been 11 years old. I would have been 11 years old at the time, or even 10. We played Sturm Graz in the UEFA Cup. Now I remember this game very, very well. Went to Graz, and I actually one of the reasons that we went to Graz was if Mum got a dog. So the reason we got our trip to Graz was there was only one deal. We go to Graz, see Livingston and Graz. Mum gets a dog. So that's what happened. So mum got her dog after that. We lost the game 5-2, but I have to say it is one of the best atmospheres I've been to. I've never stopped singing, and actually, I was actually standing outside funnily enough, I was actually outside the Arnold Schwarzenegger Stadion. And one of the groundsmen actually saw us outside, just taking pictures. They were like, "Oh, do you want to come in? Have a look around." So that was lovely. I experienced Wiener Schnitzel. I think is German breadcrumbs or something. So that was amazing as well. And because we had an overnight stay for the game, we were actually flying back on the. On the actual night of the game, so it was a big rush to get back to the airport, and my dad and myself actually find ourselves sitting beside club captain Gary Boland at the time, and I literally just piped up to Gary and said, "Oh, it's only 5-2. We can beat them 3-0." His look on his face was something else, but no, very, very good memories of Graz. But us going to Graz and Mum getting a dog, fantastic.
I think that's.
Was that that game, the return leg?
What was the score?
4-3.
Oh, so you didn't win 3-0 then?
we lost 8-6 on aggregate, but we won 4-3. And I actually counted the number of Sturm Graz fans at that home game. I think there were about 86.
That's incredible. There's nothing worse, though, when you've just lost a game, and I get it with my missus, when you've just lost a game in the first leg and they go, "Yeah, but you can always win the second leg," and you're like, "I don't want to hear that. I don't need to hear that at the moment." Quite a topical subject. I want to get all of your opinions on, and also watching in the comments below. Remember, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Get your comments in about this next one. The Guard of Honour between Celtic and Rangers. I want to get all of your opinions on that because that's divided quite a lot of people. I'll come to Scott first. Do you think it should have happened?
Well, to me, it's traditional. If you are still playing out the league, in other words, the team hasn't won it on the final day. If the team has won the league before the season has finished, in your subsequent games, it's normal to be clapped on by whoever you're playing for the remaining 2, 3, 4, 5 games of the season. That's normal. We can all appreciate the wee political intricacies of it, but that should be aside from the actual gentlemanly Corinthian spirit of football. You've taken part in a competition over 30, 33, 35, 38 games. Somebody's won it before. You managed to win it. Clap them onto the park. There's no harm in it.
I love that. Absolutely agree with that. I'll come to you, Dave, with that. What are your thoughts?
Obviously, from what you're saying, I haven't seen the news. It didn't take place. Celtic didn't bother. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to remember, how long has this Guard of Honour been going on? I remember Arsenal had it from sort of 1990s. It happened in the 1980s, 1970s. Did teams do it then?
I can recall Hamilton winning. Yeah, I can recall Hamilton winning our first division season 85-86, and we won the league with about 4 or 5 games to go. And in our subsequent games, the teams clapped us onto the park, and I've seen it happen many times over the years. It's not an abnormal tradition at all.
Well, if it's been going on for quite some time, then yes, why not? Why not? You know, the man be big enough to admit that they're better than you. That team, the champions.
They've done their job, haven't they? They've done their job. Yeah. Coyney, you were very vocal on Facebook about this. But I mean, obviously, people don't follow you on Facebook like I follow your Facebook. So I'll get your opinion, mate.
Right. Well, first of all,
you know it's a big one when he says right.
Oh, you know this is going to be a long one now.
It's going to be a rant.
The beer open, Coyney. Hang on.
Let me get myself comfortable.
We're almost 2 hours in. We're almost 2 hours in. I can't believe we've not mentioned the Glasgow Derby in 2 hours of talking on Glasgow Derby Day as well. Right. First of all, just park the Guard of Honour for a second. Let's talk about what happened on Thursday night. Absolute disgrace, and how Prague are still in the competition is beyond me. They should be kicked out for that, because it was blatantly obvious what that guy said to Glenn Kamara. Get them out of the competition. And as for that player, I've said it before when we've gone live. He should be banned for Football for Life for that. You know, it was an absolute disgrace. And to be fair, there's a few rumours that have gone on of, you know, alleged what went on in the tunnel. I wouldn't have blamed the Rangers players if they all waited for him and battered the player in the tunnel for that. I don't think that's what happened. But you know, there are some rumours that something went on afterwards. I couldn't blame him for doing that. Absolute disgrace. Guard of Honour, again, if I was in charge of Celtic, I'd have made those players line up and clap every single one of those Rangers players onto the pitch for 2 reasons. One, Rangers have been the best side in Scotland this season, and of course it does hurt me to say that. But there's absolutely no argument about it. They're still unbeaten as of today, even though Celtic should have had a penalty. But we're not here to talk about referees today. And secondly, for motivation as well, those Celtic players have been absolutely pathetic this season. Their performances week in, week out have been nowhere near the standard expected of that club. To go into a 10-in-a-row season, and I'm talking about the whole club here as well, from the top all the way through to the players, the recruitment was absolutely diabolical. To sign a player who doesn't even save shots, a goalkeeper who didn't even save shots. Absolute joke. Dan, you could have put me in goal, you could have put you in goal, any of us in goal, and we'd just say more shots than Barkas this season. You made all of those Celtic players line up and clap those Rangers players onto the pitch, because it's motivation. It's motivation for next season as well. They should be, they should stand there, they should clap them onto the pitch, because when next season starts, they don't want that feeling. They don't want to have to applaud Rangers onto the pitch again at the start of any time towards the end of next season if Rangers were to win it next year. Final point on this: Rangers didn't do it. Final point: Rangers didn't do it last season. Rangers did not give Celtic a Guard of Honour last season, so let's not blame. Let's not have a complete go at Celtic here. Rangers didn't do it last season, so it was a chance for Celtic to show a bit of class, which Rangers didn't show last season. Show a bit of class and applaud them onto the pitch. And to be honest, have they gone down to the levels that Rangers showed last season by not applauding them onto the pitch? Yes, they have, and it's just another, it's just another low in what has been a completely pathetic season from Celtic. And you know what? Celtic season summed up by the fact that the picture of Jimmy Johnston fell off the wall about 10 minutes into this broadcast today. That sums it all up, doesn't it?
Subsequently, guys, footage, reruns of Paul Meltdown will be available from tomorrow at lunchtime.
I wouldn't call that a meltdown, Dan. I'd call that an honest
I'm
opinion.
only joking, Coyney. You're an that's why I love you, mate. You've got absolute fire in your eyes when you talk about that sort of thing, and I completely agree. Vorney, I'll come to you before we come to Doug.
I'll keep mine short and sweet then, to be quite honest. It's, it was a point that I didn't think Coyney was going to make, but he did actually make it in the end. And that was, well, you line them up, you get them to line up because of how they're going to feel when they see Rangers running past them. They're having to clap them. So that would give you surely enough motivation next season after you've seen your rival and you've had to applaud your rival onto the pitch because they have beaten you that season to the league title. So you've got to. Well, that's how is that not going to drive you on for next season? The reasons, obviously, with the squad, Coyney can explain, obviously, to us better behind the players and X, Y, and Z as to whether they've got the right personnel to be able to do that. But I think if you're a player and you've got to applaud your rival onto the pitch, how's that going to feel? That's not going to feel good. You know, and we're talking about the three nations here, isn't it? If it was England having to applaud Wales or Scotland onto the pitch, or vice versa, if it was Scotland applauding England onto the pitch, it's you do it because it's a class thing to do, but it doesn't probably make you feel that great, does it?
Alex Ferguson did it, didn't he? Alex Ferguson made sure that his Man United players,
Chelsea, Arsenal,
Chelsea onto the pitch,
Yeah, utter class.
It's class.
Doug,
it's class. Yes.
Doug, what are your thoughts, mate? Oh, he's taking a deep breath. So this is going to be another one.
Well, first of all, Slavia Prague are an absolute disgrace, defending their player over a racist thing. Like the thing I get from that game is that Glenn Kamara would not react like that if anything was not said to him. He wouldn't react like that. Now, the fact that he has reacted so quickly, you actually heard Zungu said to someone that he said something racist. He says something racist. I think Kamara said that as well. So the fact that they've came out and defended the player, I think, is absolutely disgraced. They actually came out and tweeted today that they actually are against racism. Hypocrisy at its best. Dare I say it now? Celtic have been absolutely atrociously bad this season. Absolutely atrocious. Look, it would have been nice for Celtic to have, given them a guard of honour. But what a lovely touch I thought Scott Brown going over to Glenn Kamara this afternoon and actually, saying that we're all with them, because I thought that was absolutely fantastic. I thought the game as a whole was very, very good. It wasn't your usual Old Firm derby, and Morelos finally gets a goal in an Old Firm derby. I don't think we're ever going to get an Old Firm derby goal from Morelos anyway. But no, I think the thing is, Man City. I go back to this last season. Like Manchester City didn't want to do it to Liverpool, and they actually decided to do it in the end. But I mean. Look, Rangers, as we said, they didn't do it last season either. But you know what? Rangers could actually, go on and win another title. They have a very, very good squad. It's going to be very interesting. Celtic have got a massive overhaul. And yes, get rid of Barkas. He's one of the worst goalkeepers I think I've seen in a Celtic jersey. He is so poor.
When you say one of the worst, who was worse than him or at the same level?
I mean, I think you could probably go through. I mean, Brotto wasn't great, but he hardly played. Magnus Hedman, you know, who is the goal? Was it Zaliushka? Zaliushka that you had?
Yeah, Zaliushka, yeah.
Yeah, I never rated him.
He
in all honesty,
number one. There was he was understudy to Arthur Boric.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, I think, Barkas just. He just doesn't look confident in, stopping shots. He doesn't look confident coming out for cross balls. Doesn't look like any confident in doing that. And my final point on this, and I'm going to ask Scott this: do you think Hamilton will survive this season, or do you think this could be the season they finally get relegated?
Well, there's 5 games to go, and it's the 5 games against your nearest rivals, and it's certainly very, very tight right now with Ross County, Killie and Hamilton. And however the fixtures pan out, 2 home, 3 away, 3 home, 2 away, makes no difference at all. It's 5 cup finals, and Hamilton are very much in touch and are very much up for it. There's no doubt about it. It's something the club has been involved in, in the bottom 3 or 4 places, or the bottom 1, 2, 3 places for the last 5, 6, 7 seasons. It's nothing new. They come up via the playoffs, stayed up via the playoffs. So there's no reason why Hamilton won't. Right now, I'm looking at finishing 10th, for example. And trying to avoid the playoffs on the simple reason that I simply, as much as the playoffs are fantastic to watch, if you're involved in them or your team's involved in them, it's a biting fingernail case. The tension and the stress is incredible beyond belief, and I wouldn't want to put myself through that at all. Actually. So yes, there's no reason at all why Hamilton won't do it again and further extend our post-war record of staying in the top flight.
I know, it's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. The amount of times that you've looked dead and buried. But funnily enough,
we can I just go along now and help out as a ball boy in match day games and that kind of thing. So it gets me in and help out a wee bit here and there. But it's it's huge for the club to be in the top division. The Hamilton Livingston crowds over the last few seasons only 1,000, 1,100 anyway. The 2 clubs are at that end of the market, so people don't like the phrase punching above your weight, but that is what it is.
Oh, we've done that. We've done that ever since we've been in the top flight. Finishing 9th in our first season back was an achievement in itself, and then now the 2 back-to-back top 6 is just incredible. But yeah, I do agree. I think Hamilton, whenever they look dead and buried, they always get some kind of momentum, and they just keep surviving. I actually think Ross County are going to get relegated, and I think Kilmarnock will finish 11th. I think Hamilton will stay up again.
Big words like that. I'll quickly chime in about the whole Celtic and Rangers situation. First and foremost, I echo everything Coyney said there about Kamara. I think there's no place in the game for anything like that. And I always say, in a situation like that, don't look at just the player it happens to. Look at the players around the player and see their reactions. And it says it all, doesn't it? Was it Connor Goldston just went running straight there, telling him, Yeah. So there is no room whatsoever for that. The Celtic and Rangers thing, do you know what? We're past 9 now, so I can say it. The shithousery side of it, you can see why Celtic said no after it happened the year before. But like Scott said, and like all of you have sort of echoed, this is a gentleman's game that we watch and we play. And the rules.
It's the second. Sorry, Dan, to just put across your head. But
always said to do that to me.
It's the second time Celtic's done something like this. 2 years ago, Rangers cut their allocation for away fans, and Celtic had the opportunity to stand up and say, you know what, that's pathetic. We're not going to go down to that level. We're going to keep the away fan allocation the same because it's it makes for a better atmosphere to have more Rangers fans in there. But no, Celtic went and done exactly the same thing. So there's now, I think there's only about 700 away fans in Ibrox and in Celtic Park for Glasgow derbies, which doesn't make for as good an atmosphere as what you'd hope. And again, they've followed them with the Guard of Honour. So I think maybe Celtic next season need to
maybe just need to make a stand and make their own mind up instead of just copying. If Rangers do something which is maybe a bit what do you call it, a bit out of order, don't copy them. Show a bit more class. There we go. We'll see.
I'll just say that I didn't agree with it and move on. No, I completely agree with what you're saying, Coyney. Scott, actually, do you know what? Obviously, I won't certainly ask you, to go into it too much. But I mean, as a UEFA delegate, have you ever been in grounds and witnessed sort of racism at first point of view there?
You do, of course, and we're trained in what to look out for, what to listen out for. Where it does occur, it tends to be on banners or flags, hidden messages, hidden symbols, for example. That's the most common signs of it. The chanting by spectators is much, much less common, albeit it does happen. Comments by players can happen in the field of play as well. But beyond that, yes, it happens. It still exists in parts of Europe. Everybody stands for the, kick racism out, from racism, the red card, respect, all these things, absolutely vital. But every year there's another debate about it. There was other incidents this season too, even without fans. There's still been incidents at top level matches in European football this season. But it does happen. As I say, right now it's not happening with spectators in stadiums or outside grounds, for example. But I mean, I've been in various courses. I know what to look out for, listen out for, and I've spotted things, some of the appalling things that you would see at games on flags and these sort of ambush type stickers that you see in toilets and what have you, or the bus stops outside the grounds. And depending what and where it is, then obviously it's something that you would report, pass back to UEFA and let them deal with it thereafter. And with the case that you're referring to at Ibrox on Thursday night, I haven't actually seen any. I didn't watch the game on TV. I've not seen any TV footage of it since. I've seen still pictures and all the social media reports. And as Doug mentioned there too, you can tell by the reaction of the surrounding players nearest to it and the player himself, reactions. But you need to hear others. The delegate, the people present at the game would have taken statements from those concerned, present or off the field or TV microphones, whatever it happens to be, and there will be an investigation as you would expect, and these things will take their course.
It's mad. And you know what? The sad thing is, and I kind of feel so silly going back to. Well, I don't feel silly. That's a completely wrong thing to say. But I kind of don't like going over old ground. But I will. We're not seeing it in the grounds, but what we're seeing it more and more now, sadly, is social media, isn't it? Social media is it's a massive tool. Now, to be fair, and poor old Doug. I mean, Doug was victim of some horrible abuse this week on his personal Twitter page, stuff that no one deserves whatsoever. And I just kind of feel like I don't feel social media do enough to get these idiots out of our game, off our pages. I don't understand what more can be done. And Scott, for you in the professional game, I mean, you must witness it so much in your side of the role there. How are we ever going to combat it?
Education. This is one word for it. I mean, to quote Tony Blair, education. It's all you can do. We can have all the campaigns, all the media, all the players togetherness and taking the knee, or some of the clubs this weekend, I think, have all stood up to face racism. I think both north and south of the border. Some of the games this weekend, the players stood up rather than take the knee. It's simply getting the message across. I don't know what more to do. Social media, almost everybody has got accounts nowadays, be it here or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, however it happens to be. And as you say, it tends to be these direct messages on Instagram that have been sort of the undercurrent in the last couple of years, with various players at various levels being targeted, not just in the UK, but elsewhere as well. Why Instagram is more susceptible to direct message attacks, I'm really not quite sure. But ultimately, the players could make their accounts private or close off messages or whatever it has to be. But equally, as we mentioned earlier on, service is a huge part of it too. And there's nothing wrong with fan engagement by players to fans. Well done, you had a good game. Thanks very much. Happy birthday. wedding, whatever it happens to be. There's no harm in players and fans engaging in social media, but from the player's point of view, it has to be used properly. Because the minute a player does something wrong, the authorities are all over it. The minute a fan does something wrong, it's it's an investigation. It's Interpol. It's all sorts of things. It's cyber security. It's things that are above our normal levels of investigation. There's no witnesses and all the rest of it. And obviously, it could be a fake created account with a dummy email address, and it's gone 10 minutes later. I don't know how you do that. Every club would need to employ cyber security experts to immediately target it, and there's no resources or money for that. But on a wider scale, I think somebody mentioned there, how do you stop the Twitters and the Facebooks? How do you stop the platform doing it? I don't think you can. Twitter exists basically. I use Twitter more than the others. To me, it's your own personal rolling news network. Whether you follow 100 people or 1,000 people, it's the news that you want to see in your own personal News 24. Whether it's amateur players, amateur clubs, women's football, youth football, political news, this commentator, that ex-player. It's the news that you want to see. So everyone's social media is of their own choosing. I think that's the important thing to emphasise. So anybody following you, the easiest thing to make your account private and to block people other than your family, friends or teammates or whoever it happens to be. But how the platforms, the Twitters and the LinkedIns and the Instagrams stop it, I really don't know.
It's such a shame, and I'll come to you, Dave, actually, quickly before I finish this. But, it's such a shame you mentioned there making these accounts private, and the one thing fans love is to have that engagement with players, and they're heroes.
No harm in it. If it's done properly, no harm in it.
Yeah. It's the actions of these mindless idiots that ruin it for everyone else. Now, Dave, you've been to a few games. Have you ever witnessed any racism when you've been out and about?
Yes.
That's awful. It's shocking.
The one that sticks in my mind was Wales were away to Serbia and Montenegro qualifiers for the Portugal Euros. What was that? 2004? Sorry, about 2003. Yeah. We had a rearranged fixture, and we were away to Serbia and Montenegro. On that side, on my left-hand side, was where the Partizan fans stay in the Red Star ground, and the Red Star were that end. And we had Danny Gabardon, Robert Earnshaw, Nathan Blake playing for us. Every time those three lads touched the ball, got the monkey chance. I got wound up. I was next to the fence. I was ready. All I needed was somebody behind me to shout, right, go on, lads. I was over that fence. Admittedly, I was going to probably be on my own, and there was 100, 200 of them there. I'd have to get through the police, but I was going to go for them. I was going to go for those Partizan fans. I'd have got my head smashed in. I'd probably be in a wheelchair now, but I'd have still climbed over that 8-foot fence, and I'd have gone for it. Yeah. I was just absolutely. Well, I'm getting wound up now. Was it nearly 15 years later? I was just that wound up that I just couldn't believe it. And walking back to the ground at the city centre, there was a policeman. I think he was South Wales Police on duty because it was Kosovo had kicked off, and he was there training the Kosovans up, and he managed to calm me down. He just grabbed me to one side and just had a word in my ear and told them lot where to go, and he managed to calm me down, and it's more or less escorted me back to the city centre to calm me down. So I was still bouncing a good hour after the final whistle.
It does.
So that one sticks in my mind, and I don't think anything happened.
No, it's such a shame. It really is. And obviously, Doug, with what happened to you this week, how have you been, mate? You cracked on. You been all right?
Yeah, I've just got on with things just as normal. I've had loads of messages just to say hope you're all right, and I mean that kind of shocked me. I'm not going to lie, I was at work, and I had major holiday blues on that day. I just decided to post a photo of me and my fiance having like a cocktail in like a Tenerife bar, and I got me major holiday blues, and then I get this comment, it's like nice brother and sister. I was like, what? And then I'll go and reply and say no, she's my fiance, and then I just get this barrel load of abuse. I was like, honestly, but I had so many people actually back me up, and I've obviously blocked and muted and actually reported that account. I don't think anything's been done, sadly. No. But no, I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. I've been with my fiance actually all weekend, and we actually talked about this, and we're just not going to let anyone abuse us anymore. We're just going to keep on doing what we're doing. I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing on my YouTube channel. I've had funnily enough, I've actually had a few comments this week saying that your predictions are no very, very good. You clearly don't know what you're talking about, and you've never been to a football game in your life. I mean, you just get comments like that. But no, I'm not going to let the haters win.
Spot on. To be fair, mate, if you watched our video of the England selection last week, you'd know that we know nothing about football, do we, Vorney, Coyney? Okay, so before we go on to the update for the Welsh, for what's been happening in Welsh football, I've got to ask Scott, because Scott's with the job he does. Hang on, what's that there? Yeah, I did hear that. Cheers, guys. Scott, I've got to ask you the question: who's the most famous footballer you've met on your travels when you've been out and about doing your job?
You don't tend to meet the players. You're there to make sure the players and the organisers are thinking about the rules. I'm not up chasing players for autographs or pictures or anything like that at all. So on my travels like that, just to take this season alone, I was delegate at Barcelona v Dinamo Kiev back in November. So from that basis, you would say Lionel Messi, who had scored very early on in that particular game as well. So yes, Messi is the best player I've seen this season, for example. But you're not up as if they're up there chasing to get his jersey or autograph or selfies or anything else. That's not part of the job at all. I mean, the best you might get is stand at the tunnel and try and hold your phone up, and there he is, 75 metres behind you. In terms though of meeting players or things like that, you come back to Scotland games of the late 70s, early 80s, especially. Joe George was a main Scotland player and target man of that era, Kenny Dalglish too, and to later come across them in domestic football when they're managing opposition teams, and all of a sudden your boyhood heroes walking down the tunnel and things like that. I remember you 10 years ago. I remember running onto the pitch once to get George Best's autograph when Hamilton played Hibs, for example. He was at Hibs at the time. And as a young lad, the terracing, there's George Best standing over there. So you vault the wall as you could do in those days and run onto the pitch. But the minute you go onto the pitch, every single Hibs player looked the exact same. They all had the same green Buckter tracksuit, from that era. And I didn't know which player was George Best. The minute it was actually on the hallowed turf, I simply ran to the nearest Hibs player that I could find and said, "Can I get your autograph, please?" And it was him, thankfully.
Spot on. Well, look, Scott and Doug, thank you both so much for coming on the show tonight. Really appreciate you coming on. Scott, I'm definitely going to get you on the Tales of a Groundhopper podcast. I kind of feel we'll probably need about 6 weeks of episodes. Would love to get you both back on the show.
Yeah, no problem.
Sometime soon. So thank you both so much for coming on. Doug, where can they find you?
You can find me. Is it this way? The Dugout Football channel, as you can see on the screen there. You can find me on Instagram at Douglas.Horn. Twitter is enroad_1992, and Facebook is Douglas James Horn. But no, thank you very much, Dan, for having me again, and it is an absolute pleasure. And I'd love to come back on at some point.
Of course you can, mate. As long as England don't lose to Scotland, mate, you've always got a place here. Scott,
did you say Dan, when England lose?
Dan, I'll tell you, mate. If England loses to Scotland, I'm not coming on here again. There's not a chance.
We'll go into retirement.
We'll have a celebratory show.
Yep, you'll be on your bloody own, mate.
No.
Thanks very much, both. Scott, we'll definitely catch up soon, mate. Thank you very much.
No
Take
problem.
care, both.
Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers. See you later.
Take care.
Take care. What a great pair of blokes. Fantastic to have them on there.
my God, I could listen to Scott talk all night, and I'm going to get him on the Groundhopper show without a doubt, and we'll definitely get him back on. I've kept you back on, Dave, because it's time for Coyney to have a chat about the Welsh Prem, something I know you're very much in with there. So, Coyney, give us an update on what's been happening this week, my friend.
Well, I think I'll keep it quite brief because I think we've touched on some very serious issues in the last 10-15 minutes, and almost to go back into talking about football after that almost seems sorry, never mind. Sorry, you can tell I'm still thinking about the Kamara incident, but just to bring some updates on what's happening in Wales at the moment. The big news this week is that the Cymru North and the Cymru South leagues have actually been cancelled for the season. There's a few opinions on that. Obviously, the overriding thing is that the relevant authorities have deemed that it's not safe for these leagues to go ahead at the moment. Which, with the fact that the virus is still in circulation, I think that overrides everything. However, there is a real degree of frustration, which I also empathise with throughout the clubs in the north and the south. The fact that these guys have been almost had a carrot dangled in front of them for 8 months now. They've done a couple of, maybe 3 pre-seasons now. They've had that light at the end of the tunnel that they're going to play friendlies, and then they're actually going to play a competitive league season. And then it's been snatched away just as they think they're getting back to it. So whilst you do appreciate the reasons behind it, and the fact that the virus is still out there, I've also got a huge amount of sympathy for the clubs and the players involved that they're not going to get to play competitive football this season. What that also means, the knock-on effect for the Cymru Premier, is that there will almost certainly, it's not been confirmed, but almost certainly not be any relegation this season. So the teams that are down the bottom at the moment will remain in the league.
Can I see a smile on your face there, Coyney?
The
champagne
there? Pop, out it comes.
Well, I don't know if you've seen the results in the
I
league
did
since the restart, but
you won 1-0
yesterday.
Yeah.
Barry beat somebody 1-0. Was it during the week?
No, it was last Saturday.
Was it? I know Barry beat somebody, and that team gave them 6 points this season. I can't remember who it was though.
Just to put it out there,
carry on anyway.
That's 2 wins, a draw, and a defeat to a team in the top 4. So, that's a good return since the restart. In fact, that's a very good return since the restart.
No, they played very well. A cracking win at the weekend for them. With regards to the season, then, do you what is it now for Aberystwyth? Do you think are they just looking to prepare for next season, or do you think it's very much just business as usual yet?
Well, that's not a question for me. I'm on the media team. That's a question for the management. But I think there's still for any club in the league, there's still things to play for. The way it works in the Cymru Premier is that obviously the top 3 will qualify for Europe. I'm not sure what they're doing for the Welsh Cup at the moment. If the Welsh Cup doesn't go ahead, then the playoffs will take place for the fourth entrant into Europe as such. And I'd say at this stage, I think I'm right in saying any team has still got a chance with qualifying for Europe because there's not too much of a gap when you take into account there's still 10 games to be played the other side of the split.
Yeah.
So certainly from, if you want me to take Aberystwyth Town as an example, there is still very much that possibility that Aber could get into the playoffs. And, as we know, being Shrewsbury Town fans, the playoffs is just a complete lottery. Aber could qualify for the playoffs on the last game of the season and get into Europe, win the playoff final. So that's that's got to be the ambition for any club in the league at the moment. There's still a carrot of playing European football next season. Actually, I'll almost come back on myself there. Apart from one team, which is Haverfordwest County, because the way the Welsh Premier works, because it's a national league, you have 2 licenses to apply for. The national license gets you your membership for the Welsh for the Cymru Premier the following season, and then your UEFA license if you qualified on sporting merit for European competitions, then your UEFA license would grant you entry into the European competitions. Now, Haverfordwest County, who are currently, I think they're 6th in the league, they've chosen not to apply for the UEFA license because their manager doesn't have a pro license. Now, again, I've got a variety of views on, whether managers really need a pro license when they're coaching 1 or 2 coaching sessions a week and in what is a semi-pro league. But those are the rules. It's a national league. It's a UEFA certified national league, so it's got to be, it's got to be done. And because of that, Haverfordwest County will not be playing European football next season if they were to qualify on sporting merit. And that then means that potentially anyone who finishes in 8th, if Haverfordwest were to finish in the top 7 spaces, could then go into the playoffs if the FAW decided so.
Big season.
In conclusion, there is still a lot of things to be decided and clarified by the Football Association of Wales as well.
Before you go, Dave, any thoughts on that?
Well, he's answered a couple of questions. The one I was going to mention was Haverfordwest. So Wayne hasn't got a licence. Now, there's been over the year, I know Press Statin did it. They got somebody in, didn't they? I don't know if you remember a few years ago. Was his name Gibbs? Was it Gibson? Press Statin, Neil Gibson.
That's
and so somebody and they. They gave him assistant coach, and they got somebody in so they could play the European ones.
There's a paragraph in the licensing manual that states that if the FAW decide that the manager has just been brought in for that purpose, they can deny the license. So right. if there were, Haverfordwest have come out and said that they won't be doing that anyway. They want to stick with Wayne Jones as their manager regardless. But if they were to appoint someone just for the purpose of fulfilling the licensing criteria, then the FAW licensing panel have, I think there's actually 6 different panels that decide on the license. They have the power to deny that club entry into the Cymru Premier and or Europe.
Because I thought they had to have the European. The manager had to have the European license to manage in the Premier anyway.
No, they've got to have the A license to manage.
Are they the same thing? Obviously not. Then.
No, you've got to have the A license to get the license for the Cymru Premier, but to get the UEFA license, you need the Pro license.
Right. Okay.
There we go. We've all learned something there tonight.
Yep.
Well, Dave, thanks for coming on, mate. It's been great having a Welsh fan on to get their views on how the team are going to do over the next couple of weeks with the fixtures, and also getting your views on there in regards to the racism. Definitely get you back on. You're quite a loyal listener of ours as well, so it was nice to put a name to a face, mate. Thank you for coming on.
Okie dokie.
Take care, buddy.
Cheers, Dave. Take it easy. Shut up, pal.
And then there were 3 guys. Christ, we've gone on a bit tonight. 2 hours and 22 minutes. Would you believe it?
Would you believe I've actually had to go and sit next to the wall and actually plug my phone in because it was running out of charge?
I thought you were giving us a little view of the apartment, mate, of the house, should I say?
No, sorry, yeah, no.
Coyney.
I've had to sit next to the plug because my phone was running out of charge.
Coyney, I had to fight so hard not to laugh when your picture fell off the wall. It was just your reaction, mate. You went. That was brilliant.
Well, I heard it, and then I thought, what's that noise? And then I didn't look behind me. I actually saw it on the screen. I saw it just go, and I was like, oh no, here we go. And then Ad said, I had to make sure that there was not anything left on the wall. So I turned the camera off a couple of times. But the funniest thing for me And by the way, Scott's professionalism when that occurred, I thought was fantastic, because he didn't even miss a beat. He just carried on. You two were waving a bit. I did notice a little. I
was going redder and redder, and I was trying not to laugh because Scott was talking about something really important with regards to the job he does, and I thought the last thing I want for a bloke who, by the way, I must say, absolutely brilliant bloke, and I've already done the homework, lads. I've messaged him. He's happy to come on again. But yeah, the last thing I wanted to do was just break out into laughter when he was in the middle of telling us something there. But fantastic show, guys. Thanks for sticking with us. You've stuck with us for the longest show yet. These shows seem to be getting longer and longer. It just obviously means that we've got good content. Yeah, see what I did there. But other than that, guys, as I said, there'll be stuff released throughout the week. I haven't really had a chance to say about Tales of the Groundhopper, but I can do that another time. That's fine. But yeah, just make sure you follow us next week. I think the start time of 7:30 is definitely a lot better for a lot of people. People seem to be happier to come. They're not getting ready for bed like most of us are. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything you guys need to say before we go.
No, that's everything. Thanks to everyone for watching as always, and yeah, hopefully you'll come back again next week.
Yeah, echo all of that, guys. Yeah, I hope everyone enjoys what they're listening to and what they're seeing. So yeah, keep watching.
Spot on. Well, all that's left for me to say, guys, as always, is be thinkers, not stinkers. Sayonara. Au revoir.